As I suspected, 32 flavors.
Try the sauce. I'm soaked in it.
Oh, I could lick you all day long.
That's my opinion!
Why is he so quiet? What is he doing? I am talking this slow on purpose. It is the sins! It is the 60th episode of Toxic Tuesday. How are you all, everybody? Thank you all for being here. Casperius, D. Bud, Martin, Vince Womack, hello, Gutsy77, Gonzalo Bergali, Joe's Atmosphere, Eric K. Six, how are you, Six? Yes. Tina Bojan, how are you? You all are early. 9 shows for the good one. Yes, 9 shows for the good one. How are you all doing tonight? Seriously, guys. It's a good night earlier. I hung out Midnight's Edge after dark, talking some stuff. Hey, Casey, Charlie Chats, how are you? How are you? Talking fun stuff, and now we get to spread the joy, the thrills, the chills, the spine-tingling sensation of the horrors of the world. These next few weeks are going to be of a darkening sensation. Tonight, we start with All Hallows Eve on Halloween. Dart Scipio, how are you, sir? Deleted Seeds, Radioactive, hello. Let's bring in our panelists here. Let's bring in the man who keeps the visuals alive, moving, and a man who plans to do some great things with whatever he's got to show off tonight. How are you, Mark D, with the
thank
C?
you, Nick. Great to be here. Yeah, we do have some appearances by our favorite special guest, and maybe some other surprises with Michael Myers. And everyone, check out your windows tonight before you start listening to our stream. Because if you hear something rustling in the wind, you never know who might be. I was watching this late at night, and I was getting scared watching it. I've seen it a ton of times. And you still freaking get scared. I'm a big ass wimp, so it's like
yes,
it's just so well done. This movie, yeah, it's just classic. We won't get into it now, but yeah, it's a gooder, as Raquel would say. Yep.
Oh yes, shout out to Raquel.
Yep.
Hey, Delete Scenes, how you doing? All right, Mark, let's bring in our other boys here. Let's bring in our red shirt. Just another red shirt.
Hey there. Oh, wow. This was a first time viewing for me. Never seen it
First
before.
time? You're a Halloween virgin?
I'm a virgin on this one. I've seen bits of it before,
Hold
but
up.
never the whole movie.
Hold up. 28 plus people here in the chat. Are you guys listening to those words Red Shirt just said? First time. This man was a fucking Halloween virgin. Your cherry was busted from this, and then some. That was great. Oh, that was good. I Richard, I cannot wait to hear your take on this one. This is going to be very, very interesting to hear your perspective on this movie, you being the absolute first timer to this. So thank you for being here. Like Mark, I am so ready to talk this movie. Let's bring in Mr. Keto Simple himself, Dustin.
All I have to say is red shirt, twinsies.
Oh, man. Justin, I would expect to have seen this.
I don't know why. I mean, I know I've seen bits and pieces, but I've never seen it all the way through. It was another one of those movies that was on TV all the time. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad I kind of waited. I guess I'm glad I got to watch it like this. The lady and I sat and we watched it the other night on our TV downstairs and all the lights out. And we're just having a good time, kicking off Halloween season, right?
Good way to get going.
Yeah, I mean, I saw Halloween 3, the trick or treat one or whatever.
Season of the Witch.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I saw that. Like a young kid, I saw that one. And I don't know why. I mean, everyone knows Michael Myers. I've seen the sequels. I've some of those, and I've seen. Just weird how I've not seen this one.
Well, dude, I look forward to hearing now not one but two normie perspectives on this one. All right, we got two other gentlemen here. One of them is that 70s rock fan.
Well, good evening. Now, Nick, don't you know what happens on Halloween? Yeah, we get candies. It is a pleasure to be here for a John Carpenter classic. I'm not the world's biggest fanboy for horror movies, but I am of John Carpenter. And I think he created what has become a classic, an archetypal classic horror movie here. And it's still one of the best ever. A handful of best ever horror movies in history.
Dare I say.
And the music, too.
And the music. And he was great at making music for his own movies.
That music's good.
And so it's a total pleasure to be here. And this one is a doozy.
Oh, it's a doozy, all right. Before we bring in our other guy here, hello, Orion Kayan, Keely Chow, Gareth Morgan. Hello. How are you all doing? We got another guy here, guys. Well, looks like even the star of Halloween is here to join us tonight. So let's bring in Michael Myers himself.
Nice.
He doesn't speak.
It's hard to tell what he's thinking, though.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Michael.
Is that Captain Kirk, or is that?
Do we get to assume your gender, Michael?
I do have to ask Michael Myers, what was it like making all those Wayne's World movies?
What's it like to have William Shatner's face? What's it like to have William Shatner's face on your face? Like you got faced on by the Shat. If you think about that, that's a pretty facey thing. Yeah.
Do you find Jamie Lee Curtis sexy? Just nod if you believe she is. Good man. See,
Okay,
you're not all bad. Not everyone's bad. You're not.
But that's his
not
sister, isn't it?
No, it's baby sister.
No, it's not his sister.
So I think you need a hairbrush. Have you ever considered getting a brush for your hair? Yeah.
Pantene Pro V.
Or maybe a cut and blow.
Maybe L'Oreal, like maybe some Head and Shoulders. No, okay.
I'm looking forward,
talked
Michael.
in 15 years, so
yeah, looking forward to hearing your review of the film at the end of the show, Michael.
Yeah, and we're basically watching this movie through your set of lenses. So now we get to, I don't know if you'll talk, tell us about your perspective, but it would be nice to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Was it good working with John Carpenter? Did he slash the film in editing?
No. Oh, man. Well, Michael. Oh, we lost him. All right. Well, guys, welcome to the show, Mr. Tom Connors.
Actually, it was better the other way, Tom. Michael is going to be, he'll be outside someone's window in the chat right now.
Oh, too funny.
Brought a ladder.
I hope he's got a ladder. It'll be like Bluto in Animal House right now.
All right.
All right. Do it.
Hi, Tom.
Can we hear you?
He waves. That's good.
I got my speaker on, so I don't want everybody to echo. So hang on.
No.
That sounds okay.
Well,
no, it doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. There we go. Now everybody should be echoing.
It's like Michael Justin Timberlake.
Well, I brought a bunch of stuff with me, and then I'm like, oh crap, you reminded me of the soundtrack. I forgot my soundtracks.
Oh, that's a vinyl I need. For
so
real.
I might have to go grab those.
Party Tom, let's look at that again.
Looks like a chef's knife.
Oh man.
He was an Epicurean, Michael Myers. He liked the chef's knife.
It's a very tight mask because this is actually from the original mold. So clearly Shatner has a small face.
Oh.
Smaller than mine, probably. I've met Shatner, but
he's
it's covered in the original mold.
Does he have
Yeah.
small hands like Handy Randy too, or?
I don't know. I didn't shake his hand, so
It's like most movie stars are tiny anyway, aren't
maybe
they?
I
Like
did,
Tom
but it was
Cruise
like real
kind of thing.
quick. I mean, he was like my height-ish. I got a picture of it somewheres, but yeah.
So, what's it like to wear William Shatner's face on your face?
It's tight. But I've actually
He's
interviewed
tight.
the guy who designed that. You can find the interview on Midnight's Edge. It was Tommy Lee Wallace, the guy who went on to direct Halloween 3 as well.
Ooh, yes, nice.
And he talks about the construction of it.
Mm-hmm. Dude.
Simple
I love
idea
that.
as well. It's a very simple idea.
Well, they had like 3 choices. One was like a clown, which I think got used for the kid in the early part. And then I can't remember what he said. The other one was just like a ghoulish mask or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Shatner one, they just took it, shaved off the eyebrows, shaved off the sideburns, teased the hair up. I mean, this is a little goofier than it should be, but
Shatner had a wig anyway, right?
I guess it depends.
Didn't they like widen the eye holes a little bit too?
Oh yeah, they opened up the eye hole just a little bit more. Other than that, yeah, then just painted it white.
You got nice eye holes. Oh, that is horrifying to look at. But anyway,
the original mask was only used in the first 2 films, though, for those who are curious.
Yes. So I have a very interesting out of order story about my first discovery with Halloween. The first Halloween movie I saw was not this one.
Same here.
Sadly, it was Resurrection, the last one under this original timeline. So that was summer 2002. I remember The Bourne Identity had been out that year. Obviously, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man had been out. Attack of the Clones had been out. And I remember, so I had finished 8th grade. I think it was like June or July when it came out. And I had known about, I'd seen a little bit of Friday the 13th. I'd seen a little bit of Nightmare on Elm Street, but I had not actually seen Halloween. Even though I'd heard the name, but I didn't know anything about it. So saw Resurrection. All I remember was the commercial because they kept showing that little mini preview with Busta Rhymes where he's like, trick or treat, mother. And all of a sudden it cuts out. So I'm like, oh, he says fucker. Okay, I get it. He says fucker. So I remember it was one of those theaters where as long as a parent bought your tickets, you could go see it. And I can't remember whose parent bought the tickets, but we were able to go without parents. But so one of the parents helped buy the tickets, so we gave them money so we could all see it. Turns out
you
that
actually
that
got to see it on
theater
the big screen? Sweet.
at 14, and I remember I was 14, and oddly enough, though, everyone from my 8th grade graduating class was there. How that happened by chance was really weird. It was and it was one of those super teenager time showtimes.
Let me guess.
Like
this was 1998 or something like that.
02.
Or no, 02?
02.
Okay, so it was the 25th anniversary. Gotcha.
Yeah. Well, was it 24 years because 1978 was this movie. So 2000, they should have postponed it back a year. Maybe they would have made a little more money off that opening weekend. But I remember that theater was so loud and annoying. And it was the only time I've ever been in a movie where the people who worked at the theater stopped the movie. And you people need to stop talking because people would not shut up. And I'm like, dude, I'm thinking you all got told by this lady to shut up. Otherwise, there will be no refunds. And everyone immediately shut their mouths the rest of the movie.
Sometimes that's fun, though, in a bad movie when people are yelling at the screen and talking back.
Well, and Halloween's one of those movies where there's not a lot going on for the first hour.
Yeah.
I mean, there is, but it's if you miss on some of the dialogue, other than Loomis's dialogue, it's not that important.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So watching it, I'm thinking, okay, so this killer's kind of got an intriguing character, but man, what is this whole deal he has with Jamie Lee Curtis? I didn't understand it, but I hated all the teenagers. I'm like, why are the teenagers so stupid?
You just wanted to kill the teenagers, Nick?
I'm starting to wonder what I want out of that. And then it wasn't much longer later, I saw the actual proper first movie, And then context was a thing. And I'm like, oh, okay, now I get this story. And what I like, it makes me realize how far we've come, not just in the franchise.
Oh, you saw
of
Resurrection
Halloween.
in the theater. That's what you were talking
Yeah,
about.
Resurrection in theater.
Okay, I thought you meant the original one.
Oh God, I wish. So now that I saw the actual first movie proper, I understood the context so much more. A, but B, I realized at that time, like, wow, the teenagers in this movie actually feel like characters who kind of matter, because a lot of the movies, especially the slashers later on, they're just a bunch of characters who are just there for the killer to kill.
Yeah,
Whereas in this
Halloween
movie-
Resurrection, outside of Katie Sackhoff's tits, that movie's worthless.
Yes, but they alone are worth it.
Is that the movie where they're all wearing like they're live streaming, like they're all on YouTube or something during the
Yep.
Oh, and she
In
gets her head
actuality,
get cut off, or
I can't remember, but
or she catches the head. I guess that gets cut off.
Yeah,
Oh, we got
I
a special guest there. Do you see that?
He's watching us, like Michael Myers. But no, this is one of those movies that I mean, like Nick, I did not see the first film first. I actually saw Halloween 3 first. So I don't have.
Oh no way! You saw Season of the Woods first.
So I don't have the hang up about Halloween 3 that most people do. I actually enjoy Halloween 3 quite a bit, and to me, I watch it every year. Yeah, and because I saw it as a kid, and I had no frame of reference at that point. It was just a Halloween movie on Halloween. Honestly, the first time I saw it, I'm not even sure if I knew it was a Halloween movie at that point. But then I kind of realized that, figured that out, eventually saw the whole series. And of course, you know, I adore the first film. And the first film, I mean, there's several movies that I've bought in time again on home video, but Halloween has to hold the record. Like, I have bought several cassettes of this. In fact, I still have the last cassette release I have of it right here.
Ooh, let's see it. Show us the good.
So this would be the 20th anniversary. And this is actually a limited edition. It comes in 2 tapes.
Dude,
like
that box is huge.
Wow.
So it actually had a laser disc counterpart.
An orange.
That is beautiful.
That's my old video store label right there. But yeah, this is the last technically last VHS release. I'm sure there was a couple more cheaper ones after that. And then I've had
now
several
people
DVDs.
are buying they're auctioning those now. They're like, people love the old VHSs too. So.
But I already showed this one. This was one of the last newer. I mean, it's been released on DVD a couple times since then, but this was one of the last times it was just DVD, just an only DVD. Then, of course, I had an older Blu-ray, but I also got the box set from a few years back, so that replaced my other Blu-ray. But I have not one 4K copy because this is the Lionsgate one. This is the one that came out last year from Shout, and this actually has a record with it that has a redo of the original theme and Laurie's theme by John and his
7-inch
kid.
single, an actual 7-inch single.
Yeah, like a 7-inch single. It's like splatter.
Dude, that's cool. Damn, Tom.
Nice.
Oh, look at that piece
Tom,
of
can I ask, who's your sugar daddy that pays for all this? And what do you have to do to get that money? What do you have to do to get that money?
And eating crappily. That's the other thing. And hitting a point of the month where you're like, I don't need to eat.
I want records and 4K.
And I do have the soundtrack as well. I have the CD version that came out years ago. And then just recently they had a orange version of it that had was the first time they ever went back to the original soundtrack. For those who may not know, the original soundtrack had been lost for years. So they went back to the stems. Yeah, they went back to the stems for the original movie. And so that's the record I have is the music from the actual stem from the movie. You can just barely hear like shit in the background from the movie. It's weird, but it's a legit release. It's an official release, but they lost the original tracks.
How the hell did they lose the soundtrack? I mean, I know I lost my homework. I mean, that's like...
don't know. And Alan Howarth, when he did the official soundtrack for the movie, he just redid John Carpenter's stuff. And fans who are like really diehard fans have hated that release of the soundtrack because it's not exactly the same. It has some added bits to it's a little out of timing and all that kind of stuff.
And we're talking about soundtrack that would have been recorded on tape originally.
I believe that's the other thing. It was digital then to tape, because for those who may not remember, like Carpenter was one of the guys who was first to really kind of get into digital stuff.
Yeah. Surprising you didn't have a backup then somewhere.
Yeah, like the whole like if you listen to it, there's like a Casio keyboard noises and stuff like that in there, so it's hard to say what happened to those tapes.
I saw Mad
Nick
Bart
lose
again.
it early.
Y'all did. Just think Mad's face zoomed in. And Brian, to answer your question, I'm going to say both, because Loomis is one who dealt with him during his upbringing. And Laurie, well, Jamie Lee Curtis's character and that whole relationship.
Years,
I'd say equally.
Staring out the window, staring past the wall, looking at this night.
Nice.
I think Donald Pleasance just so fucking good in this.
It's come to your little
Speaking of Donald Pleasance, obviously as the legendary Loomis character, do you feel like 70s that Christopher Lee saw his character, this one was the one that got away? Because this is the role that Christopher Lee turned down. And he says the biggest mistake of his, cinematic career. Obviously I'm happy with the way it's turned out, but what do you think it could have been with Christopher Lee?
I don't know. I just think Donald Pleasance has got a certain, even though he's not playing a bad guy here, he's got a certain creepiness to him.
There's only two other people I think that could have handled this, right? Yeah. And I don't think that Christopher Lee would be the right role.
No, I think if you would have
if you would have got maybe what's his face who played in all the Christopher Lee movies with him, Jesus Christ, the name just escapes me. Peter Cushing, from Star Wars. Now, if Cushing would have played Loomis, that would have been more spot on.
Could have worked.
Or maybe, go ahead.
I gotta say, I just want to say that watching Donald Pleasance in this, and the last thing I saw him in was The Great Escape, where he played the forger. He just inhabits a part. He's one of those old school character actors. You give him a costume, you give him lines, and he becomes someone else.
Well, and he was one of the most famous Bond villains for the longest time, too.
He was one of the Blofelds, but he's the guy who would give you 100%. No matter how bad the movie might be, you'd always get 100% from him.
Yep.
He took it seriously. But I can't consider anyone else in this now after having seen him play the part.
Yeah, maybe Peter Cushing or Roddy McDowall, but I think,
Roddy McDowall.
Sam Loomis is Donald Pleasance, right? And Donald Pleasance is Sam Loomis. It's his most iconic role.
Absolutely.
No matter, and he's been in billions of movies, right? Like that's the thing about even if you just count John Carpenter's movies that he's been in, it's crazy. Escape from New York and all that kind of stuff. But like this is his most iconic role, and of course his namesake is based upon the character from Psycho. The name,
and there's a direct lineage between the two. Both are
it's a very Hitchcockian movie.
Psycho
very much
rightly gets a lot of plaudits. I think Halloween deserves the same ones. I think,
and that's why Jamie Lee Curtis was just inspired casting because of Janet Leigh. And they actually wanted, I can't remember the actress's name, but it was the daughter of the mother from Lassie.
You're right. No, you're right. They originally wanted someone else, which is funny you mentioned that, Tom, because originally Curtis was not happy with her initial performance with this movie. It wasn't until she heard from Carpenter herself that Carpenter was all in on it, because she actually thought her career was doomed after this.
Yeah, and she'd only been on television. She had really not done much as far as acting wise.
Of course, she's got a very famous dad, so that helps.
Tony Curtis. Yeah,
but I'd forgotten that. Yeah, the connection with the mother, Janet Leigh.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why, like when she came in, they're like, "Yeah, she's Janet Leigh's daughter," and it's like brilliant.
Right. Yeah. It's so perfect. Yeah. No, I can't imagine anyone else but Pleasance now in this role, having seen it so many times. It's just, he inhabits the role.
I shot him 6 times.
That's right.
I just had to check to be sure, but the woman who played the mother in Lassie was June Lockhart.
Yeah, it was her daughter, and I can't remember her daughter's name. It's I can't remember if it's Samantha Lockhart or something
Miss
like that.
Lockhart.
Yeah, but I think she actually did have a decent career, but I can't remember who the actress is offhand.
There's a great
But-
scene here too with that idea of filming through the mask as we're watching this. So that's brilliant. It's very, like we said, Alfred Hitchcock.
Well,
obviously
speaking of
inspired.
Hitchcock and other things, like this is more inspired by Touch of Evil's opening shot by Orson Welles, where it's just one continuous shot. And believe it or not, there's actually 3 edits in this shot.
Because they didn't have
if
the
you-
steady cams back then, right? To do this.
This is actually one of the first films to use the Steadicam.
Oh, they
Now
had
you
the
mentioned it,
Steadicam,
Mark,
okay.
but it wasn't called the Steadicam yet.
Okay.
Yeah, they actually had for this scene they used the
It was called-
Steadicam, and
It
for a
was
lot
called
of the
the
shooting
less
they did,
wobbly
yeah.
cam. It was the slightly
pretty
less
much.
wobbly cam.
Yeah, I think the first
Yes.
time the Steadicam as such was used was Kubrick's Shining.
Yeah, as the actual patented Steadicam, but this shot here specifically used a version of an early version of the Steadicam, basically.
Like a prototype.
And so yeah, it went from outside up the stairs, back down the stairs to the kitchen, and then back out front.
Funnily
And it's
enough,
3 shots altogether.
all right, because this
Just
it
works
could be
so well.
it could have been Batman here inside that mask.
It
It's
could
Bat
be
Tom.
It could
It's
be, I
Bat
was going
Tom.
to say, Bat Tom. What about
Bat's
Christian Bale?
Is the bitch dead?
No, but his parents came home, so it couldn't be Batman.
Yep. Good call.
Oh, God, man.
Could have done with him in my stream yesterday.
All right, no, Joe's Atmosphere. Let me take a look at it. So, okay, so that must mean it was a direct donation. Let me. And Joe's Atmosphere for $5 says Halloween isn't scary unless you watch John Carpenter's classic Halloween. Hail to you, Joe's Atmosphere, for $5. Thank you, sir.
It's almost a tradition to most people. And funnily enough, I don't know if you can go back at all, but that shot of his sister on the floor, that's one of the few times in the movie there's actual blood. Believe it or
So
not.
very
Oh,
few
yeah,
times.
One
and
of the
this movie
few times in the movie.
Well, that's a characteristic of other John Carpenter movies like The Fog. There's not a lot of blood. It's more suspense oriented.
I
And
can't
actually,
remember-
that might be the only blood in the movie, if
Well,
I'm not
Laura's got
mistaken.
some blood on her arm.
Oh,
I
yeah,
think,
that's right.
from
Yeah, I was going to say,
splash.
there's a little bit of
That's-
blood later.
You're right, though. That's about it. Yeah, that's
I
not,
don't
not
see any
much.
blood.
Yeah, what were you looking
blood
at?
where?
What blood? What blood?
Oh, on her boob there. Yeah, I see it.
Look at my
lady who
eyes,
died.
not my boobs.
The lady who played
I've
Judith.
made my choice.
The lady who played Judith apparently had quite a frustrating time getting the fake blood off her, and so it came down to Jamie Lee Curtis helping her. Well, get it off her chest.
A lot of the crew, I
Oh,
think a lot of the crew volunteered, but
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, the crew did, but then it came down to Curtis finishing out because
They probably couldn't afford fake
some of the
blood, so
guys-
Lord knows what it is.
Some of the guys were doing it very rough. 'Cause, yeah, well, that's the thing. This movie was obviously very, very cheap. Like one, it was $320,000 to do. And
Well, you know where that extra 20 came in? Was Tunnel
for
Pleasance.
yeah, I was gonna say it's
Yeah.
like 20 or 25K for Pleasance alone, and a lot of the actors actually had to wear their own like actual clothes and not like costume or movie set clothes. So they actually had to.
Well, the
wear their own
girls did,
clothes.
yeah. The
Yeah, the
girls,
girls
they
did.
basically just said, show up, pick like 3 wardrobes, show up.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the crew, they basically, or cast, they said, here's a voucher for fucking
Did they make the
Goodwill.
poor? Did they make the poor kid pay for his costume, his clown costume?
This one,
here?
no. See, these kind of costumes, this would have been one that
I'm
was
joking,
overseen
yeah.
by, yeah, I know. But this is one that was overseen by Tommy Lee Wallace, of course. But yeah, no. But
innocent little
that
kid
mask
that
was
got
one of the early possibilities for Michael Myers, which is funny considering the mask that is in Terror Train, which is a movie that came out after this, starring Tommy. I almost said Tommy Lee Jones. Jesus Christ, Jamie Lee Curtis.
Mhm.
3 names throw you off real quick.
Well, no, it's interesting with Jamie Lee Curtis. Like, she obviously, besides her being a central character, she felt like her character was less like her actual, I guess you could say, her actual self, because she has her friends Annie and I'm already forgetting.
I forgot to.
Yeah, her. So Lori,
Girls,
Annie,
girls destined to be killed in the
yeah,
movie.
Destiny killed.
Now you made me forget it.
Yeah.
God damn it.
Lindsay?
No, she
No,
felt like
Lindsay's
she
the
could
little
really-
girl.
Linda.
Linda, that's it. Yeah.
Linda. She felt like she
Linda.
could relate more to Laurie's actual friends, but that's also a testament to how strong Curtis's performance as Laurie is, that she can, be that. And also, for anyone in the chat who wants to know, there is no Haddonfield in Illinois. Trust me, I've looked. There's a Haddonfield in New Jersey. I think one of the actors, I think it's one who's
actually, it was
Annie, or was it Linda?
The co-writer.
However, from Haddonfield, New Jersey.
Nick,
actually, Deborah Hill was, but yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
There are a bunch of psychotic slashers in Illinois, though.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, they wanted it to be Midwest. That's why. And Illinois is like middle. And actually, it was Deborah Hill who was the co-writer with John Carpenter, and also at the time his girlfriend. Actually, they might even been married at that time. I can't remember now. I don't remember if they got married or not, but they were together for a while, and she produced and co-wrote a lot of his movies with him, and she actually passed away, 10, 15 years ago now. But no, she actually wrote all of the women's stuff. So like she oversaw all the stuff with the girls and their wardrobe and all their stuff. And you're right, like Jamie Lee was like the opposite of what Laurie Strode was. Yep. But what's funny about this is Laurie Strode becomes like the archetype going forward for the last girl in all these movies. Yep. And not only that, this is one of those rare films where you have, I mean, even though it's as low a budget as it is, and probably the arguably lowest budget of all the horror films of the time, it has the most stars in it, right? Like, I mean, even though Jamie Lee Curtis was up and coming at that time, she wasn't, she became Jamie Lee Curtis more so later on. This is actually her first movie.
This is introducing. So it must
Carpenter had only done a few movies as well up until this point.
This is before The Fog, Escape from New York.
This is after Assault, yeah.
After Assault, it's Dark Star was the first I remember seeing, and then there was Assault. Eyes of Laura Mars.
Yeah, but you had Nancy Keys as Annie, of course, who's been in tons of John Carpenter films, and she was actually married to what's his face from The Fog and Halloween 3. The name escapes me now. The main star.
Dude,
Jesus,
you know who I'm talking about too.
Yeah.
And then PJ Souls, of course, was probably the biggest of the girls at that time as far as actress wise, because I think she was just off of Carrie, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, and headed for
Stripes.
Yep.
Oh God, I can picture him.
And just before Stripes, yep.
Yep.
And then so like I mean, as far as those guys go, and then you had, of course, like a lot of regulars from John Carpenter, like Nancy Stevens, who eventually became one of his regulars. Charles Cypher became one of his regulars. And Charles Cypher's in his own right at that time was probably a pretty well-known character actor as well. But I mean, just the solid cast that this has.
Yeah, they're great. Yep.
No, you're right. And that's definitely an ingredient that became a lot more missing in a lot of these later slasher flicks. Like you would have your occasional Busta Rhymes or your Paul Rudd show up, but a lot of these actors would have these very lifeless performances. It almost it all started to become like the joke of the movie, where you started rooting for the killer over the regular people in the movie because the regular characters were just so unlikable, so whiny, so bitchy, so complainy that it got to a point where it's just like, well, you start caring more about the killer because you got so annoyed with all the regular human characters. So this movie, I feel like, benefits that much more from it. I feel like it'd be nice to have those type of characters where you can invest in more so. I feel like it would make all the difference with these movies. Richard, what's your thought, obviously, with this, probably being 10, 15 minutes, because you were a first timer on this.
Yeah. I mean, the tone is set really well, and this is where I really started to appreciate Pleasance playing this character. And the opening scene where Michael kills his sister, and that's I noticed the blood, and I thought, okay, this is what I'm in for. This is a slasher film. And I noticed after that, there seems to be a distinct lack of blood in this movie. Why is this referred to as maybe the slasher film? I expected a whole lot more gore, like sort of Roger Corman levels.
Yeah.
And
it's because this became the prototype. That's why.
Right. And also because it's Carpenter, and Carpenter Carpenter doesn't have to throw it in your face. and and rub your face in it to get this point across, and to get the tension, and to get the release of, oh my God, look what's happened. So I just thought it was interesting that this is the prototypical slasher film that didn't go for the gross out. And
Yeah.
the thing I really liked about it, and again, this is definitely Carpenter's hand I can see on this, is yes, there isn't a lot that happens in the first hour unless you're paying close attention, because he's giving you lots of things to notice if you're paying attention, and you are learning about the characters. You're starting to get you're starting to classify them. You're starting to get a sense of Laurie and Annie and Linda, and which ones you like and which ones you think, oh Jesus, not a bitch. And then but you got a sense of the dynamic between them, and who's likely to do what, and that plays out later. That does play out later, and so the thing I loved about it was, I thought this would be what the joke about slasher movies is, that you get to see her tits and then she gets killed, and the reason you're invested in her character is because you got to see her nude first. You see some of that, but you've already had 40 minutes to get to know her with her clothes on and get a sense of what a person she is. So there's a whole lot more investment in these characters by the time things get really weird. So,
well, Linda's really the only one who shows her boobs, which is funny because it's PJ Souls, but like, she's probably one of the most likable of the girls.
So, since you're mentioning that, Tom, I'm going to assume that you probably very well know this, that she was at a screening where, obviously this movie is being played, and there's that, we'll just say the infamous scene.
See anything you like?
Yeah. And apparently a guy back of her says, hell yeah, I do.
Hell yeah, I do.
This is a great scene. It's a great scene.
Well, and this just shows you how great Carpenter is at setting shit up. And you guys are right. Like, this movie is literally the definition of stretching a dime into a dollar, or a penny into a dime, however you want to look at it, because John Carpenter took $300,000 and made it look like $5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a big part of it was getting Dean Cundy as his cinematographer. And you may recognize that name, you may not, but you do recognize his fucking work. And when Dean left John and went with Steven Spielberg, you can tell a big difference in John's quality. Because I will argue that this, even though it's his cheapest film, is probably John Carpenter's best looking film.
Yeah, you're right, Tom. The number one investment you can make if you've got a low budget is in the best director of photography you can get. To make your film.
And that's what helps you get through that first hour. It's not just following the little things, it's how beautiful it's shot. Like the way it's look at this shot right here. Exactly.
Great shot. Yeah.
It looks like $1 million. And it's 320,000.
Now, is he wearing the mask there that early, or he's not wearing the mask?
Yeah, he already. I think he already. I'm not sure.
Stolen the mask.
I think
right?
if I had to guess, because if you think about it, this movie leaves a lot to your imagination, since it's pretty much being viewed from Michael's perspective. It's kind of like when you see like all stabbings, you don't always see the blood or always see a stab, but it's definitely giving your mind to imagine how bad it looks or how it's how it feels, and it definitely gives you that feel. Like a lot of this movie relies on your mind to interpret things.
Yeah,
like Psycho. Like that's this whole build up. I was just saying, the whole build up to this, it's just so slow, but it's brilliant. Like now this scene where she's looking through the window and she sees Michael Myers again through the window, and of course there's no cell phone. She can't text her friends. You're much more isolated.
Yeah, he's already got the mask. Yeah,
he's got the mask there. Yeah. So, she's seeing this, and it's so well done that then he disappears, and that's why I love Hitchcock. We watch. Like The Trouble with Harry is one of my favorite movies, and of course, Psycho's a classic. But it's that slow build that then you get the payoff. There's not people aren't being slashed every 5 seconds in this movie right from the beginning. You get this great build up, which you everything is earned, and the cinematography is fantastic, and it's that slow build, and it's well done. And you're in the life of these teenagers too. Their day in high school. It's Halloween, and this poor kid gets his pumpkin wrecked right here. And then, of course, Michael Myers just walks up to the kid, and this other kid, I guess no one notices because it's Halloween. There's this creepy guy wearing wearing a mask, I guess. But it's just a
One
great
thing-
setup.
One thing when I watch movies like this, the dead giveaway that they're not in the Midwest is the schools.
I thought you were going
that
to say
is
the
not
palm
a
trees that
Midwestern
accidentally get in a few scenes, but yeah.
It's awfully
yeah, there's
warm there
palm
for
trees over
Halloween, and right?
Yes.
Yeah, and none of the houses have basements because that's a given in most horror films as well. No scene in a basement in this movie at all.
Yep.
But no, you're right. That was one thing, and they did everything they could to try and make it look like the Midwest. They actually had a bag of leaves that was so precious that they would rake it up at the end of every shot so they could spread it out at the next one, because that's all they had for leaves. So all those leaves that you see on the ground there, they would go afterwards and they would rake them up and put them back in a bag so they could use them for the next shot.
Come to my house this weekend.
Okay, as someone who's lived in the burbs, I gotta give them credit because even though this is filmed in Pasadena, California, they really made you feel like this was in the Midwest. I mean, I've lived in Illinois all my life between the city and the burbs, and this really did nail that suburb environment where it's a lot more peaceful. It's not Chirac in the suburbs, but it also makes it that much more like tense and crazier that this guy can just come to this normal neighborhood and leave this whole layer of tension, atmosphere of tension around everyone. And it's happening in a small town where you're supposed to be the safest, but it's not. And that's cool because it's also happening with babysitters, and you get kids into the mix. It definitely really adds to that. Holy crap. And once again, you don't know the full extent of this guy's capabilities. Like, holy fuck.
Well,
and this scene coming up right here, like, oh yeah, sorry about that.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, the scene coming up here, he's on the payphone, he sees the truck, and he goes investigates, but he doesn't go, where's the person?
Yep.
No, it's your funeral. If you know it's your funeral. So, Tom, I'll let you answer this one. What do you think of 4 through 6? Yeah.
I know a lot of people love part 4.
Yes, a lot of people.
I'm not a big fan of the 4 through 6 timeline.
I'm not either.
I only watch 4 through 6 once every maybe 10 years or so, if that, because I'm not even a fan of the producer's cut of 6. I think it actually makes the movie a little worse because that really implies heavily that Jamie's baby is Michael's baby, so that means
it's really weird.
There's a lot of weirder shit in that one, and I'm not a big fan of that whole storyline with the thorn and how, just kind of how they kind of treated
stuff.
Loomis. Yeah, and Loomis kind of just became what everybody said he was at one point almost. So it was kind of like you're really hamming up the craziness. You've literally made your protagonist is now Crazy Eddie or whatever the guy's name from Friday the 13th is, who's like, you're all doomed. It's like you can't make him that character. That's not who he is. Yeah, you can have him going, nobody's listening to me, but you can't have him sound that nuts. Right. Like, and then just some of the shit he does in the Jamie story. I was never a fan of, because I was always under the impression that Michael wouldn't hurt a kid.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
I thought too from watching.
So I never liked him chasing Jamie around as a kid. Like, that was always something that bothered me too.
Yeah,
and of course, notoriously, Halloween 5 is one of the worst horror films of all time because of the one character.
So
what's her name? I can't think of the name offhand, but she is one of the most annoying. She's like the Jar Jar Binks of fucking horror films.
I felt like Rob Zombie's Halloween movies were the Jar Jar Binks of the franchise, but as far as that character,
those are pretty bad.
They're bad. They're as bad as 4.
H2 is like a horrible horror. Like
H2O. H2O.
No, not H2O. H2.
Oh, H2.
The Rob Zombie's Halloween.
Rob Zombie.
Yeah, H2.
Because the Halloween titles get confusing because there's
H2O. I'm actually more of a fan of.
No, H2O is better. I'm with you on H2O.
But see, I have a thing for that because that came out right when I graduated. That was one of those movies. It was the 20th anniversary of Halloween. Halloween was one of my favorite movies at the time. So to me, it was just one of those movies that captured a moment. But like looking back on it, it's like, Scream really ruined a lot of Halloween. Yeah, I like
this. This can get confusing here with Halloween.
Okay,
so this is the best version of it I've seen, though. So
yeah, this is really good, Mark. Thank you. So okay, H2O is not bad. I hated Resurrection, but I'll tell you what, it gave me appreciation for the franchises much more after seeing the first one not long after. Because once again, you're seeing not the original, but you're filling in all the blanks. That it's clear that Resurrection was made for people who already know the franchise, not for
Resurrection
little
was
eighth grade
the
Nick.
definition of a cash-in.
And
like,
of
literally.
Oh, I learned that later on in life. I didn't.
Yeah, for
understand
the
that.
short version of that was Jamie Lee Curtis didn't realize that in her contract for H2O, there was a stipulation that she was supposed to show up. She was contractually obligated to show up in any sequels. She was under the impression that Michael Myers was fucking dead, because that was the whole point of doing this, is that she would come back one more time, kill his ass, done and over with. But here's the problem. Mustafa Akkad had a different rule that overrode that, and that is you cannot kill Michael Myers. You can blow him up, you can leave it ambiguous, but you cannot in any way dismember him, because he needs to be able to come back somehow. So they came up with this convoluted thing that if they were to bring him back, that beginning we see in Resurrection where it's not even Michael Myers, they came up with that to appease Mustafa at the time. Jamie Lee was under the impression, though, that this was going to be the last one. They didn't realize it was going to make as much money as it fucking did. That's the thing. So when it made as much money as it did, they're like, well, we got to do another one now. And then Jamie Lee Curtis is like, I'm not doing another one. Fuck that. I killed him. And they're like, well, you're contractually obligated. And she's like, I don't give a shit. I'm not showing up. So they were in court for over a year about this shit. So finally, when it boiled down to it, they came up with it that she gets killed off in the first few minutes. She got paid, I think, really close to the same amount she got paid for H2O. So she made a killing on it. Michael Myers got to kill her. Fans hated it.
Yeah.
It is one of the most disliked films of all time, which sucks because it actually has an interesting plot. Because once you get past that first part, I like this idea because it was right at the time of reality television, YouTube and stuff like that was becoming a thing. Streaming was just becoming a thing. So I think they were kind of a bit early to the game on that. So if you take that front end of it off, it's not so bad. And of course, replace Busta Rhymes because he's not a fucking actor.
I gotta say, Tom, I just want to extend that.
Yeah.
With all this discussion of, at some point it was decided that Michael can't be killed. The fact that he's the Energizer Bunny of serial killers in this movie where nothing stops him is the one thing that bothered me. Because it seemed like that was only so they could do a sequel. That was their sequel insurance, just in case.
Pretty much.
Because they don't explain it.
I agree
they explain
with you,
why
Richard,
he's a psychopath, but they don't explain why he can't be killed.
That's one of the things I loved about this original movie is that there's no supernatural element to it. It's just a psycho with a mask.
And part 2, yeah.
There's no magic. There's no Deus Ex Machina, no magic box. Nobody comes back to life because a spell has been cast. It's pure human beings.
Well, that's what they tried to do. Red Shirt with 4, 5, and 6 is give you a reason why he's supposedly so strong.
And I just
and that's the whole Thorn storyline, and it is just convoluted as fuck.
I was out by then.
Well, it's a bad. I mean, I can understand coming up with a bad excuse. Oh, there are those leaves again. Coming up with a bad excuse that doesn't work is worse. But it's not terrible. It didn't break it for me. It was like it was nagging at me. What's keeping him going? Because it just goes and it goes and it's almost like, did you peak too soon and decide you needed to shoot 4 more scenes? I don't know. I got one other question. Did it strike you guys as strange that kids were trick-or-treating without being accompanied by an adult?
No,
because back then that wasn't no thing.
The 70s,
right?
Yeah, no,
Mrs. Fisher commented on that. That's why I asked, because I said, I went trick-or-treating without an adult almost.
Fuck no.
We
were just told
killer on the loose, but
we were just told don't go into anybody's house,
right?
And be back by half hour after late.
Yeah, you'd be with other kids as well, as long as you stay together.
Right.
Yeah.
What I did was I would go for houses where they would say, take 1, pour the entire book in my pillowcase, and I'd have a whole bag of candy, look for houses that had the take 1, repeat the process. And we would be
within 10 minutes. You got a full bag of
to this day. That's what Nick still does.
Of course he does. He come up to my house and did it last year.
So yeah, and it was always a group of friends around 4 to 5, and it was just normal, especially out here in the area that I live in. Yeah, it was just normal that kids just went on and did this, and your parents like, hey, just be home at this time. Yeah, it was part of the process, and you'd stuff yourself on candy on the biggest sugar high, then eat more candy in the morning. It was such a glorious time to just do that, and you'd be staying with your friends, chowing on pizza, playing N64, all the usual stereotypes. It was great. It was a jolly time in my life.
And
So
I love
Tuesday
Charles
thing,
Cypher
Nick.
in this too. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Charles Cypher was good.
I think there's something, as Gareth is saying in the chat, it's something inferred. There's something supernatural about him, but it's never explained. Like, how does he move that whole tombstone of his sister? And I mean, how many hundreds of pounds is that?
I used to think the same thing, but then I saw a video of a cop going after some dude on like Angel Dust or PCP, and that motherfucker kept coming, and he had like, I don't know how many fucking shots unloaded in that bastard. Like, the cop unloaded the clip and then had to reload, and the sumbitch was still coming. So it's like, okay, I guess there's some possible people out there that at some point, when if you're crazy, I guess you can get crazy strong too. So
yeah, you can. I've seen a clip, Tom, along those lines of 5 cops trying to hold one guy on Angel.
Or there you go, yeah, or like 5 people trying to hold this guy down. And you're like, how the fuck? Like,
But that's a good thing about this movie too. It doesn't explain a lot of stuff, that you're left thinking. So you're like, maybe there's something, because Pleasance keeps saying, he's from hell. It's an evil spirit, basically, or his character in that the lines about describing Michael Myers. That's
kind of the whole thing with Sam is like he's supposedly dealt with every kind of nut job on the planet, right? But the way he talks about Michael Myers is it's a warning. He's like trying to tell you, like, this is the one kid I couldn't crack. Right, like I could not get through to him.
I'm sorry, Tom. Go ahead, finish.
No. I was just gonna say, he couldn't get him at all. Like he couldn't get him to talk, couldn't get him to, and all he could figure out is that he was looking past everything to this night, right? Like that was his whole thing. But anyway,
I'll give it one thing. I'll give it one thing for not having explained Michael's just stamina, is that it is the setup for the payoff. Was that the boogeyman? And he says, I do believe it was.
Yeah.
And that made that the payoff for it.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, that's the point Joe's making, that there is a supernatural element to it.
And speak of that supernatural element, yes, I am aware of that book. I unfortunately never read it. As far as I'm aware, it's not accessible to get a hold of. So
it's not very easy to get a hold of. No.
Yeah, sounds like
I used to have the novelization of Halloween 2, which is considerably different than the movie, but it's still the same story. But yeah, like I think it's the same thing for Halloween. I think they expanded on some things for the novel, because back then that was the cool thing. I think we brought this up before, like with Spaceballs, the novel and all that kind of shit. Like when they used to do the novelizations back in the day, they were actually pretty neat, because you would get not only an early look at maybe like what the screenplay was like, but otherwise sometimes they would give the author free reign to kind of expand on things, because they didn't necessarily know it was, because they had to time them, to where the book would come out like a couple weeks or a month before the movie would come out. And in the case of Star Wars, like George Lucas pushed that novelization out a year before the movie came out, and that's why a lot of people think that movie is based on a book to this day. It's like, no, he just pushed that out there because he knew he wasn't going to get any backing from the studio. So he's like, as long as I can put out novels and toys and posters and shirts, I'll sell this movie on my own. And that's really what he did. He kind of created what Comic-Con is today by doing that very thing. I mean, it existed before that, but he took Star Wars to Comic-Con, and that was the first time a major movie had kind of really pushed itself at Comic-Con, and it was with those posters and all that other kind of stuff. But Halloween in the same way is kind of like the Star Wars of horror films, if you really think about it.
Oh, I agree.
And not only that, it was the prototype going forward. Even Alien, the first Alien is basically a ripoff of Halloween. And it's even been admitted by the creators.
I can see that, Tom.
Wait a minute, Tom. Tom, I'm older than you are. I remember The Exorcist.
Oh.
Well, The Exorcist is a different kind of horror movie.
Oh, it is a different kind.
That's a different kind of horror movie. That's a get into your fucking brain horror movie.
Yeah,
especially if you're religious.
Nightmares. Yeah, I'm a Catholic school kid. I couldn't sleep after watching it. I can't till this day. I have trouble watching that movie.
What I'm glad you mentioned with
freaking
Exorcist
out in public in the theaters.
with
See,
Exorcist,
I think this movie
Psycho.
was more based on the idea that we had, like, it's after the Manson murders. You also had, I believe at that point you had,
Was it the Kennedy? No, that was after.
oh, that was years before. You had the
Yeah,
Kennedy
years before,
assassination
yeah.
and his brother and all that stuff. But no, like, I'm trying to think of his name, the guy that was down in California. Not Ted Bundy, but the one before that. But you did have like
Gary Gilmore? No.
Maybe. I don't know. There was a bunch of, there was the one guy that did, there was
Gilmore.
There was a few like serial killers at that time too. So like all this stuff kind of culminated in like, because Psycho had come out, and then like before that we didn't have like a lot of serial killers. You know, like you didn't have a history of that in kind of like in the way we do now. And like guys like Ed Gein and shit, like Ed Gein is even barely a serial killer, which is kind of funny if you look at what he actually did. But like, who was it at that time? The Zodiac Killer, I think, was big at that time.
Yes, he was.
And there was, and I think that's loosely kind of what that was kind of inspired some of this thing. But the whole idea was they just needed a potboiler movie made for next to nothing. It was going to basically be a B movie for drive-ins, more or less. And it really wasn't meant to be anything more than that. And it didn't even, the first year it came out, it didn't even, it was only on like 4 screens on Halloween. They opened it in one city.
It was a state thing. It's first city.
Yeah, they went state by state by state.
That's right. Yep.
So a lot of people who saw it in the first run probably didn't even see it until 1979 or 80. That's the funny thing, because it was such a slow burn, and it was one of the first films, like I brought up all the videos here. That's one of the reasons I brought them on. It was one of the first movies to get a major video release as well, and the first horror movies to ever get a major television network premiere. And not only that, they finagled money out of NBC Universal at the time, because NBC Universal showed the premiere, and Universal bought the rights to Halloween to do Halloween 2. So they did this whole big thing with Halloween 2, and they actually shot specific scenes for the TV version while they were making Halloween 2 to tie in Halloween 2 with Halloween 1.
There's more
to fill out the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, because they needed to be 2 hours, and this movie is like almost 91 minutes. You want to get like very
well, the 2-hour aspect is because
So
they had to
they
chop
needed-
some shit out, but they needed it to be 96 minutes for the run.
they needed to fill in the gap. So, but they actually filled in some scenes that were actually, I guess I could say, pretty useful for for a TV.
Well, the most famous one is the sister scene, right? Where they visit the school and
that's
Michael
on the
has trashed
wall.
the school, and he inscribed on I think it's on the blackboard, sister with his knife.
Yeah, so it makes you think:
Yeah.
is he saying that Curtis is his sister, or is he talking about his sister Judith Myers? That's always kind of like the mystery.
Yeah,
Which
it was
one
always a
is
mystery,
it?
but then we find out it's actually Laurie, which John Carpenter never liked that, but I didn't hate that aspect, because if you look at it, it explains why he waited 15 years. He
Yeah,
waited
that
until
makes
his sister
sense.
was exactly the same age as his original sister. That's to me what always made sense. But
Oh yeah, no,
and it's the same
I
thing with
agree.
H2O, and that's why it ties in so well with H2O, is that her son is 17. So it's all, and that's why I like that trilogy. To me, that's the original trilogy. I don't mind the newer films. They're all right. But to me, it's Halloween, Halloween 2, and H2O. Those are the 3 movies that I watch.
That's fair.
And Laurie got to kill him, and his head got chopped off. That's the end, as far as I'm concerned.
Right? No, that should be, because that was such a fake out where it ended up being someone else's head. That was bull shit.
No, and I love that bit too, because she's sitting there, she fakes him out by giving him like the hand, like she's gonna be, give him a sweet moment. No, fuck that. She hacks his head off. She's like, ha, fuck you.
That was a good ending. It was a good ending. Speaking of,
And I love that. You want to know, I mean, I've seen a lot of films in theater, but there's a lot of energy in that scene where she comes out with that fucking axe and she screams Michael. That whole fucking theater erupted for like 3 minutes straight. They were like, yeah, like it was on, like people were standing and cheering for that fight, like when she's kicking his ass, and then like that whole thing, like it was like a fucking boxing match. It was so cool. Like there wasn't even that kind of energy in Freddy versus Jason. Like Freddy versus Jason, there was some scenes where people were like, yeah, cool, and stuff like that, but it wasn't like that. Like people got up and cheered when she come out and she screams Michael, and she's got the axe in her hand and shit. Like, yeah, they were ready to get it on. It was like, yeah.
Oh, that is awesome, Tom. Yeah, see, you're right about like I had a similar experience with Freddy versus Jason. I saw it opening night. Like it was I guess you could say it was mild. It wasn't like a dead crowd. It was very mild. Like there was
Yeah,
some
they like some
excitement.
of the stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but it wasn't anywhere on the caliber of the energy of clearly the Halloween stuff. And I guess that just goes to show you how much of a pioneer the franchise is because along with your psychos and your exorcists, we used to know a lot of horror movies for being in like dark gothic castles, and these were the movies that kind of brought to the home set to our own living rooms. So it made these movies feel so much more personal rather than having these creatures being these worlds away from us. So that was a big deal to have all these people. And then all of a sudden you had them with the knives and these simple suits that you wear. Like, bro, this is freaky. Because now you think about, oh, it's in my dreams. Oh, it's the babysitters. Like they think of every scenario that tugs at the heartstrings and it gets to you. And that's why Halloween exceeds at that. Oh yeah,
this is the greatest speech in this movie right here.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I spent 7 years trying to get through him, and then another 7 just trying to keep him locked up.
It's when you realize, oh shit,
what was behind that boy's eyes was pure and simply evil.
Evil. Speaking of evil, we got 2 direct donos here. We got Brian Yoder for $25 says, so I can't stick around. Just wanted to drop a strange thought. How would the opening scene from Scream have gone differently if Tom was written into Drew Barrymore's character?
It would have ended pretty goddamn quick. And that's what I said. It'd be funny if you had a Scream movie where somebody finally get the goddamn answers right.
Oh,
it'd be a short movie.
All right, Brian. Thank you for that $25. And we had Joel's Atmosphere.
That's why they never call Randy.
Oh, Handy Randy.
No, Randy in the Scream films. That's
Randy,
why.
Randy.
Yeah, he never got to play the game.
Joe's Atmosphere of the Nerve $5 says, I saw it first on HBO. My friends and I watched it every time we could. I was a freshman in high school. See, we were all breaking the laws when we were kids. You know why? Because when we saw these posters and these trailers, and when any of us had our parents that say we couldn't watch it, it just made us want to watch anymore. It's kind of like when you're a kid and you see that, I don't know, that Pantera album and it says like parental advisory. You're thinking like, I don't want the censored copy. Why have the censored when you have the uncensored? Yeah. Like, I want the parental advisory copy. Like, I want that thing with that big fat
parental
logo
discretion
on
there.
You ain't going to take the one with the parental guidance sticker to school to show everybody, are you?
Yeah, I'd be
Nick,
embarrassed.
these are Marvel comics here too, and she's saying all those crazy titles.
Yes.
And Howard the Duck is one of them. I think it's a #1 Howard the Duck.
Howard the Duck.
It's Howard the Duck. Yeah.
And also there's a Godzilla, I think, in there too. But these are Marvel comics for us. And I remember those ads being on the back, in the 70s. So yeah.
Just
Random aside.
Briefly wanted to go back to Loomis's paragraph earlier, his speech.
Yeah.
Go for it.
When he said, I was told there was nothing left, no reason, no conscience, no understanding, even in the most rudimentary sense of life or death. That does imply that the person that was Michael Myers is not there and it is something else inhabiting him. Because even your average sociopath or psychopath has speech and can be talked to and has some kind of understanding or logic. Sometimes extremely clever people can be sociopaths, psychopaths. He's implying there's nothing there. Like the kid is gone, something else is there. So that would support the more supernatural explanation that he is inhabited by something.
And or some kind of schizophrenic split in his brain, right? Or some kind of
but there's
chemical
just nothing human
problem.
there at all.
But what I think is, and the reason
the only thing that's left is an animal, to go to your idea, Tom, of like if you took out all of the human personality, what would be left would be the lizard brain, the hind brain.
Basically, yeah. And like, I mean, on a technical level, he may have had like a stroke or something personally. We don't know. We'll never know because back then they wouldn't have had the ability to probably even check into some of that shit.
But he does have the ability to reason, or he wouldn't be able to plan anything that he does.
Well, that's what makes him scary, right? Is there seems to be some kind of, exactly. He seems to have some kind of notion of what he's actually doing, but at the same time, you can't reason with him. There's no talking to him. He won't talk to you. You can't really even confuse him. It's just he's got one motivation and that's it. But
like a
that's
force
what I
of
think.
nature, like a hurricane.
And I think that's
Or
what
like-
Rob Zombie really missed the most in his remake, right? Like,
Or like
he
the-
set Michael up in this environment where he was abused and all this other shit. It's like, that's not what made Michael scary. You're just making it obvious. What made Michael scary in the first place, and that's what the whole first opening scene's about, and that's what Loomis's big speech is about that you just said, Brian, is that he was saying is that this kid was just a normal everyday kid, and all of a sudden one day he just became this other thing.
Yeah.
And nobody could explain why.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Loomis,
and I think that's what Rob missed. Yeah.
Loomis's speech about him, I just realized after this discussion, reminds me of nothing so much as Quint's speech about a shark coming at you.
Absolutely.
In Jaws.
Very much so. Very much, yeah.
Yes, it's a very similar mentality to the shark. Yeah. Just a cold killing machine.
He had black eyes like a doll's eyes, and then even Loomis says a very similar line to that too about his eyes.
And as we're seeing this go on, we're seeing the slow build happen where once again we benefit from a less is more performance. You don't need to show your killer at all times. This is something where a lot of the other movies did not have as much of the intensity because you build to seeing Myers like dominate. Like, yeah, you see him at a
This
few
is one
parts
of-
where they see him like in their hallucinations,
Like,
but
animal lovers hate this scene.
Yeah.
And just so you know, the dog was not hurt.
no, the dog was absolutely not.
This is
hurt.
actually the shot you see is actually the dog trainer lifting the dog up, and then they just they slowed it down a little bit, and all he did was set the dog down. That's all it is.
Is this the same dog that gets eaten, or is that a different dog?
No, that's a different dog. And here's the funny thing, though, is this is why I bring this up,
mentioned
and I kind of dropped everything to bring this up. Whatever noise they use, though, for that dog, it gets my dog upset every time I watch this movie. So whatever noise they use for that dog, I don't know what dog was doing what that they got that sound effect from, but it affects my dog every time. She gets visibly upset from that noise, from that dog moaning. So it makes me wonder where they got that noise from, and it scares me.
Well,
but that's why this, like the shark, I was in Jaws, you don't see it because the shark is so never really worked the model, right? So the animatronic, so that's what's great about this movie too. It's like they've got a low budget, and can you imagine if they tried to make this
They're
for the
watching
first time
the Thing.
with CGI today?
Which is funny because that
Mark.
wasn't available on video at the time.
Oh, cool.
And that's
Yeah.
actually his personal print of the movie. That's why it's letterboxed. But anyway, I'm sorry. Continue.
No, I was just gonna say thank you. Because you'd imagine they had CGI and all the special effects, and that's why this movie today they make all these graphic scenes that everyone's getting gutted and you see everything and you can do all this stuff with special effects. And of course they could have done a lot of this stuff back then practically, but they didn't choose to do that go that route. And that's why
they didn't really have the budget to either, probably.
Yeah, but you could. I mean, you could have done it.
Forces creativity in other ways, not having the budget,
absolutely.
which is what happened here. Sometimes it just means you get a shit cheap movie. Sometimes you can get something better.
Well, and that's why I think the cast is important. The story was important. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry, man.
I have one.
I was going to say that this movie scared me. I'm sorry, it just scared me watching it again, like I was saying last night. So even though I've watched it, I know what's happening, and I hear something outside or something, and then it's not like you're, Michael Myers is going to show up. It just plays with your head, right? But it could, right? Yeah, thank you. I'm going to sleep well tonight.
You're going to sleep great tonight, Mark. Was that the original Thing or Carpenter's The Thing?
That's the original Thing.
That's
Because
the
Carpenter
original
hadn't
thing.
done his thing yet.
Yeah,
but that was the thing.
The
thing is, it was his favorite movie at the time, and it wasn't on video. And he got the rights for it for the movie, but they didn't have a copy that they could use. So he had a video copy that was printed off for him, and that's why it's actually letterboxed. They didn't really do that back then. So this is even technically before Laserdisc and stuff.
Do you mind if I go back to Gareth Morgan's comment in the chat about Michael being possessed on Halloween night? Which is, I'd never really thought about that. It's only that night.
All right, hold on.
So why
That technically
night?
isn't, though. That's the thing, is he snapped that night and he just never said or did anything since.
So
then.
from that
he
point
became like
onwards,
catatonic. Yeah,
not every Halloween night. It's
All right.
always from.
he's
wanna
always
mention-
catatonic, but he didn't move till 15 years later. Yeah.
I want to mention this, and Vince, what Rob Zombie did at the time with those movies was an absolute atrocity, especially the second movie. I watched that Halloween 2, I think, in theaters, and I never watched it again.
We're not supposed to sympathize with Michael, though. That's
You're
another
not,
point of,
and this is
of Rob not getting it, and he's a pretentious fuck. If you've listened to some of his interviews at the time, he said he could make Halloween better because Halloween's never been one of his favorite films. It's like right there, that's why he should not be making this movie.
The guy's good as a performer, but that's where the extent of it is because he did
and we have
not
monsters
get
to show
Halloween.
for that too.
Oh, dude, that should
Yeah,
have
that's
never been a thing.
The
him doing
monsters, the monsters looks like
the
a
proof of the pudding, right?
looks like an adult parody of what he should have made.
Yeah, that's a very well worded statement, Dustin. So, Dustin, you haven't really chimed in much on Halloween. Like, what up to this point? Like, I guess you could say you're in normie territory. What are your thoughts on this movie thus far into this part? What
Well, as
what
I'm
went through
watching
you?
this movie, so I'm wondering, like, okay, so if Michael Myers is in a catatonic state for 15 years, he's just sitting there staring at a wall. How does he get strong enough to lift a person by his neck?
Because he was on a keto diet.
Was he?
No,
That's right.
actually, that is one of the more plausible things. I've read about, the kind of orderlies in a mental hospital when they're writing about abuses, like when they were justifying shutting them down. Catatonic people, if you move their arms, they'll stay there. They'll just hold it there. So you can put catatonic patients in weird positions, and sometimes people with sixth sense of humor would do that. Right up until the moment that something inside that patient changed. And people
They
have
do
been
imply
badly hurt by catatonic patients lashing out.
Well, and they do imply that he's paying more attention than he really leads on, right? Because like they're like, how the fuck did he learn how to drive? It's like, well, somebody must have given him lessons. He was being sarcastic, but that just probably means he's paid attention to shit.
Yes, but my point is, one of the things about catatonia that nobody can explain, but it has been observed, is sometimes in bursts there can be incredible strength. So
yeah, but you can't build muscle mass if you're catatonic, so that you might have short bursts, but overall you're going to be very weak physically.
Marathons, right? He's not going to run any marathons, but for a brief period of time, could he pick that kid up with one hand on his throat? Possibly. It's not the least believable part of the picture to me.
It's not I'll take this over what Zombie was doing with his absolute trash of atrocity. So I will drop it on the Zombie. It's just
maybe he followed a catatonic workout routine.
Ooh, what?
Okay, maybe there was a book. I don't know.
Is he I don't think he's suffering from split personality disorder. I don't. I mean, if the panel wants to chime in on this, go ahead. But I don't.
He's not split personality because he's only got one personality, which is what he is here.
Yep,
there's nothing else.
I don't see that, so that's where I'm at with it. So
Interesting to think about, but
it's good to entertain those things.
I think the strength aspect just comes in the supernatural part. Yeah.
And
I mean, if he's like legitimately like possessed or whatever, like I guess it says in the book, is that the kind of consensus?
I haven't read the book.
I haven't read it ever.
There's kind of an allusion to it, but they really expand on this whole idea that he's got the mark of the thorn and all that kind of shit. Which, for the shortest version of that, is tribes one family out of the tribe would get chosen. And one member would get the sign of the thorn, and that person ends up killing the whole family, sacrificing them so nobody else gets killed.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely something.
But as long as there's a family member alive, that individual just keeps killing until they get to that family member. That's kind of the whole thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Some kind of energy driving him, because you don't just get shot, stabbed, blown up,
so
things without having something keeping you going.
So you know what? Celebrity
Rasputin.
You know what? Celebrity is not a fan of this franchise for a very obvious reason. Mike Myers.
No. Oh, Mike Myers. Yeah.
Which I don't get. I would have just changed my name if I was him, to be honest with you. But
well, he was I mean, I can see why you say it, but the thing is, dude, I'm so glad that he did, because that name is just so famous for Wayne's World, Austin Powers, like.
Well, Michael Myers was
Myers.
actually the name of like one of the guys who got the distribution deal. Sorry, my fucking stutter's kicking in. The guy who got the distribution deal for Assault on Precinct 13. So to pay him back, they named Michael Myers after him.
Wasn't there a Halloween joke in one of the Wayne's World movies or one of them?
No, there's a Leatherface joke though. Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Well, hey, it would be a very awesome horror comedy Gen X.
This is Mike Myers. It would be Mike Myers trying to kill his namesake. Yeah.
And the strength thing too. It's like I've known people that just didn't work out, but were insanely strong. Like we had one guy at work. It's like we needed to move something. I'm a pretty big guy, but we'd call him over, and he had muscles on muscles, and he never worked out a day in his life. And knew another couple of guys like that where they were just strong as hell. It was like unbelievable. So, and then plus combine it with, you think there's some, I always watching this, I always felt there was some kind of supernatural force or something evil or possession or something going on, but they never explain it, which is great because you can always talk about and debate it. Just concerning this movie, none of the other movies after. If you've just seen this movie,
I never really thought of it till tonight, Mark. I mean, I didn't read the book, and I didn't know about that. I thought it was purely the guy was just nuts. And this was all human driven, but now
if I remember right now that you guys mention it, there was some shit in the book. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. That like somebody who used to babysit for Michael Myers put a hex at him and the sister when they were younger, put a hex on the family or some shit. Like that's, I think, in the book. And she like practiced witchcraft or some shit. I think that's, if I remember right, in the original.
I know nothing of that.
Again, so somebody in the audience, correct me if I'm wrong.
All right, chat. That's your that's your chance here. Let us know.
But it's just some convoluted little thing they threw in there just to explain it. But yeah,
you know what's all right. So now we're at this point. It's interesting to think that in 1978. Granted, it's we're in 2022 now. You would think in the 70s, there's been a good amount of horror movies up to that point. You would have thought somewhere in there, someone would be like, we're going to name our movie Halloween. The fact that it hadn't been taken is like impressive, even in the 70s, because that's such an obvious title with obviously the holiday of Halloween and what it means and what it's about. You would think someone would be like, oh, God, I'm going to eat that up. So, yeah, it worked out that they got the thing because originally they were going to go with the babysitter murderers, which sounds almost like one of those those like cheesy Z-list horror movies that are on Netflix where the acting is so atrociously bad, it's supposed to be that way on purpose, kind of like a Thanksgiving type of thing. The babysitter murder sounds like one of those type of movies, so I'm glad.
Well, it sounds like one of those don't answer the phone, don't go upstairs, don't do, like one of those kind of, which ended up were like basically rip-offs of Halloween after that.
Don't
but
breathe.
Don't breathe.
Halloween, a lot of the things that became of Halloween were some ways rip-offs because obviously, with the holding on to the big knife and obviously a character having a very mystical, almost maybe supernatural presence. You can all debate that if you want. Obviously, always coming back after 800,000 different hits. Yeah, this movie really got a lot of those tropes like off the ground.
Yeah. And Babysitter Murders, I think Trembling's right. It sounds like an NBC movie of the week kind of title. But again, a lot of movies that ripped off Halloween had similar titles in the near future after this. But the thing is, I think the thing that got people's butts in the seats was mainly the title. You're right, Nick. Like you said, I mean, there was like some like silent movie that had used Halloween before, but it was not like a horror movie from my recollection. But like it had been completely out of circulation and they didn't know about it. Nobody knew about it anymore. So like, yeah, you're right. At that time, Halloween had not been something that really been used. And all they'd had to do was just set the movie on Halloween night. And I think the other thing that really sold the movie was this iconic image, right? I mean, I think that was one of the big things that helped.
Let me show it again.
Well, the main pumpkin
I
pop
love
art.
that
I mean, it's like early pop art almost. I mean, you just didn't have, something like that just pops off that black poster and just really grabs your attention. and now it's just become synonymous with the holiday.
Ooh.
Honey, get your ass away from there,
dude. You know what? I'm glad the scenes were in here because it shows you like you could still have this really dark horrific movie. You could still add in these small tidbits of comedy. It's really funny. It still doesn't like completely take you out from the movie. Not like where it's like, I guess we'll just say for reference, and I don't want to go down the well, but it's a relevant reference. But
well, you also kind of need this scene.
Humor.
You kind of need this for Loomis, really, because otherwise Loomis just comes off as a nut job. Yes, so this just kind of shows him being human for a minute, right? He's just having a bit of fun.
Yeah, it definitely does humanize his character. You see he's having fun with it. But it really is a nice touch because it's humor where it's still fun and funny, but doesn't still take you out of the serious situation of the movie. Because nowadays we get polar, like where
I just
it's
love
so
the little
funny
smile
it takes you away.
there.
All right. You get a genuine smile there, guys. Look at that. Happy
He's
smile.
a shit scared out of him.
Yeah, but it's nice to see that little touch, sneak in, and it still makes you feel like you're still in the Halloween movie. Now, where it's like where you have a scene that's so deeply serious, but then you have a scene that's like so slapstick funny, where it takes you away from the tension of the movie. Like you're still in the element of the movie. So,
well, and it's funny that Jaws was brought up. I didn't really even think about it, but the dynamic between, like Brackett and Loomis here is really very reminiscent of Brody and Hooper and Brody and Quint. Like if Sam is sitting in for both characters, right? Because you kind of have this great little rapport with them two, just kind of hanging out, and Brackett's trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, but he's like, "You're not giving me much here to go on, Doc." And he's a great small town sheriff. He's not a dick. But sadly his daughter gets killed and everything like that, which is kind of like the lessons learned that he didn't listen to the doctor, right?
Well, he just blamed on them pesky kids.
Well, he did kind of listen. He said, "I'm going to stay with you tonight. I'll be on the lookout." But he didn't go like.
But he didn't take it
as
seriously as he should have, probably. Yeah.
But he's also like normally like a lot of times in these movies, he's like you'd say like you're a crazy loon and get out of here, and but that's what another part that makes every scene in this movie really works well, and it's a short movie but it gets to the point. But he's like, yeah, more fancy talk here, like you said, like a Midwestern,
death has come to your little town.
Yeah, to the college guy. Yeah. So this ominous scene here. Mark. No, I was just saying, he's like, you're telling me they're lined up for a slaughterhouse, and
it could be.
You know what I like about Loomis, though? Unlike today, where you'd have a guy like that would be some kind of woke academic, whatever. He's totally beast. It's like, this guy's a shit disturber and we gotta kill him.
Yeah, well, like the nurse in the first scene is actually, talking to Loomis and saying, "Well, you've got no compassion for Mike Myers," and she's actually kind of playing that role that you talked about. And
he's like Loomis.
You talk about him like he's some sort of thing, I think is what she says.
Loomis has got nothing like that.
Don't you want to call him him?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, he's a thing.
I like that about his character.
I do too.
He doesn't dress it up. He doesn't pretend it isn't something else. He doesn't pretend it's something else. He doesn't try to soften it or excuse it. He's like, we got to get this guy.
He realizes what is reasonable versus what is unreasonable. And Michael Myers is at a point where he's not going to reason. You're not going to talk him out of it. He's beyond safe at that point. The minute he did the deed that he did 15 years before, early in the movie, there's no saving him after that. It's not even close. So I want to mention something earlier. There's that scene where Annie was on the phone. She was talking with her boyfriend, and we never really actually see him. But the voice of Annie's boyfriend in this movie was John Carpenter.
Yeah. And the voice on the TV announcing the movies is Tommy Lee Wallace, the guy that I was talking about today.
Yep.
And then, of course, this scene has one of those jokes that didn't age well, but that was the thing, is there wasn't as many, let's say, diddlers back then. So, like, the whole, I rip your clothes off, and then we rip Lindsay's clothes off, and all that shit. Like, it's like, that joke didn't age too well.
Yeah, they're drinking and driving.
And the drinking and driving. And
that's the classic. That's the classic party van too that every guy wanted to have in high school back in the day, to and then if you pulled up to pick up your date in a van like that, it's I don't think you're going with that guy right now. Yep, with the party van.
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
I had a chuckle, and you hear him walk out of the car. Also, you hear the beer cans falling out. Right?
Yeah.
To go back to what you were saying about Loomis for just a second, quick point.
Sure.
What he did for me, especially in the early part of the movie here, where I'm wondering if anything's ever going to actually happen, or is Michael just going to stand around and stare at people? He's setting the stakes, and nobody believes him, but he's
Right.
doing it for the audience. He's telling us this guy is evil and he has to be stopped. You don't talk to him. You're probably not even going to be able to control him enough to arrest him. We're just going to have to shoot him. And he produces a gun at one point. I'm like, he's a psychiatrist with a gun. Okay.
I think the bracket's like, do you even know how to use that goddamn thing or something like that?
Yes.
Well,
no, but that's really, he is like the Quint character, the Hooper character in that sense, to where he's trying to explain to you what the shark is, right? And like with Quint, there's nothing but killing this thing, right? There's no in between, and I'm the guy who's got to do it. And that's kind of where Loomis fills in this role. And I think you're right 100%.
Well, they're mentioning the Great Pumpkin there, Gareth. I got to tell a quick story. So I'm at my cousin's house. They're like 10 years older than me. And it's Halloween night. For some reason, I'm there for Halloween night. And I'm in a cot in their room, and there was two brothers in the room. And I'm like, an 8-year-old kid or 5-year-old kid. And they're talking about the Great Pumpkins. They're talking about, Charlie Brown. So then they start making noises, and they start shaking my bed. They're like, the Great Pumpkin is going to get, whatever they were saying. I was scared shit, and I woke up screaming. So like my aunt would come in and is like, "What's the matter?" I'm like, "The Great Pumpkin was just here." I'm like, and she's like, "Go to sleep, you're all right." And I try to sleep, another couple of minutes later, I'm waking up screaming. And then the last time, my uncle came in. The third time, my cousins did it. Like, knock that shit off. If you scare Mark again, you guys are grounded for the week. He's like, there's no Great Pumpkin. But I just remember being like so fucking terrified with the bed shaking and totally dark. It's like, and they were great. They were like asleep. Like, we didn't hear anything. We didn't hear anything. And it was like, you bastards. They would still talk about it years later. But those are the kind of things that are scary, right? When it's dark and you don't see anything, and you're just strange place, and that's why this works so well, because it's really just scares the crap out of you by the not seeing much, right? Because Michael Myers is like that shape that, as they say, they call him the shit that moves around, and he's here 1 second, gone the next, like he can teleport practically. So that's why it's and then with a mask, of course, that scary mask, and he doesn't say anything, right? He doesn't talk about how he was messed up as a kid and why he's that way, and he's just out there to take everyone out, and that's it. So it's really, this movie holds up. I mean, all these years later, really well.
Little man, no, and it's funny because we not really mentioned all too much about the Shatner mask, because it was really just a mask of what's his character's name in Star Trek?
Captain Kirk.
Captain
The
Kirk.
Don Post Captain Kirk mask.
He had to dye the hair. He cut off the sideburns, and he made bigger eye holes to make it more, I guess you could say, expressionless. Right there's our boy Kirk.
Yep.
When Shatner was originally he was not about the mask, because he was all
Kirk didn't, or Shatner was not a fan of this mask, the original. Even though it came from well, they used to call them death masks, but now I think they just call them doing a mold. But like they did Leonard Nimoy and him for the show.
Nimoy,
and Kirk and Shatner was not happy with how his turned out, I guess. So
did he get money off of this mask?
I'm sure he did. Yeah, and that's
they came to a settlement. They came to a settlement, is what happened.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that artistic thing, like they changed it enough to where it's not really the same mask anymore.
Yeah.
And also,
but they also made sure in the sequels that they never used this mask again. Up until the 2018 version, they used a newer version of it, which is based off of this. But before that, they would always change it up so they wouldn't have to worry about anything. Yeah.
And how toxic is this line here? It's like after they just done the deed, like it's all you can say.
Go get me a beer.
Give me a beer. Yeah.
So She was telling him to go get. So does that make
Yeah.
him the soy boy of this scene?
Well, I think most guys would get up
She
to,
is
to do
kind
that
of
for that.
the
She is
alpha
kind
in
of
this
the alpha in
relationship.
this scene, and she does pull it off well, where you actually get sold by it, like thinking, "Wow, that guy is a bitch," and she actually kind of owns it. I'm
Yeah.
serious.
Did he,
She
did
Well,
he
do you
come
want
owns
back
it.
with, I thought you were going to get me one, and she just shuts that right down. And he winds up getting up.
Well,
Yeah,
Bob's not really that much of a soy boy either, but I mean, it's just, they got a really great rapport. I think that's the big part of it.
Hey, do you
Yeah.
want any more? Get me a beer.
But clearly, like, what's her face? Annie is really into Paul. So, like, we never even get to see Paul.
Nope. She.
So Paul must have been the bee's knees, though. I tell you what.
Oh God. Well, we're getting to one of my favorite parts.
This is awesome.
Well, and this is once again, this is where I mentioned earlier when I said you get a lot of the
Thank you, Sick.
imagination. Okay, go ahead, Tom.
So then that means that the book wasn't written until they started working on part 2. Or no, maybe. Oh, he means his original sister. That's what it is. Okay, never mind. Okay.
So once again, you can't see the blood here, but you can imagine sometimes when you don't see everything, it gives you the mental visual of how it look and feels in your head, and sometimes that's more unsettling than what you actually can sometimes see because you're imagining it. It gives you that mental like, I can imagine myself because all the stabbings here are really dark.
Most of this gets cut out on the TV version. Like the TV version cuts like right here.
Yeah. A lot of it does get to, but sometimes it is nice to have that. No,
I mean the modern
that
version they
person.
show all this shit, but like on the one set I was showing you guys before, the newer 4K one, this actually has the TV.
Does
the
it?
Actual TV edit on it, where it has all the scenes cut out and everything, and all the dubs and everything. Yeah.
Oh, hold up. Let's.
Sorry about that.
No,
That's
you're
right,
good,
huh?
dude. You're
So
good.
yeah, I actually
Killing
watched the TV version last year or whatever it was, and
it.
just like skimmed through it. But like, yeah, this scene was cut out. It just shows you
It
shows him get
killed,
shoved
or-
up against. It shows him getting shoved up against the wall, but once he raises the knife, it cuts.
I mean, it's crazy with the stuff they show on TV today. Like if you watch the TV series Bones. Oh,
But this was in the 1980.
Oh,
yeah, this was the
80s,
1980
okay,
cut.
There's
Yeah,
almost fetish levels of gore on mainstream television now.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. But between that and then just the notoriety this movie had, I'm sure that's another reason why they had to trim it down a little bit too.
Yeah, and look how strong Michael Myers is there too. He's been
I don't think hardly any of this shit's in the TV cut from my recollection. And that's why they had to add all those scenes to it, Nick, we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Because they cut most of this bit out, and then like when it cuts to the next scene, like a lot of the Annie's death is cut out too.
The TV
like it's
version
chopped
would have
down.
40 minutes of talking and nothing else. Yeah.
It was a lot of that, yeah.
And something about this death reminded me of crucifixion. I don't know, maybe that's just my mind working, but just being hung up there with the look of the feet at the end is just so creepy. And there's no not loud screaming. There's not a ton of blood.
The
but it's just
creepiest
that
part
eerie-
isn't even the death. It's Michael just looking at him.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. He just
Prolonging
he's just standing there. You see him maybe like flinch his head a little bit.
Yeah, he
like,
tilts his head just a little bit like a
that's
dog.
what I
after,
meant.
he's like-
That's what I
he's like
meant.
that. Yeah, it's
Tilted.
like-
That's what I meant to say. Tilted. And yeah, he's just standing there like no big deal. It's almost like he's looking at like a painting. He just finished.
And that's what Nick Castle, the guy who played the shape in this one, that's kind of what he was saying, is like he's just kind of like admiring his work, and he remembers thinking something like in his head, like, oh, he kind of died weird or something like that. Like just something to just kind of think funny in his head, just to kind of motivate
if I
him.
fix his body, maybe if I fix the crooked part of his body would be more straight standing. I don't like how he looks a little slightly to the left. Let's center him out a little bit. Just like a framed photo, guys. Just like a framed photo.
Yeah, your wife says, "Hey, move that over a couple inches to the left. It's kind of not level." Yeah.
Well, we haven't even brought up the music except for the beginning. And Andy's right, because the music is what got this movie sold.
Oh yeah.
For those who don't know,
a few days.
They showed this movie to like Paramount and Warner Brothers and all the big studios, and none of them wanted anything to do with it. They said it wasn't scary. It didn't have the soundtrack yet. That was the thing that really kind of kicked it off. So then, after they got Carpenter's soundtrack to it, that made all the fucking difference in the world. And they've shown, like, on TV, they have like this really great thing where they show like the scene where Michael attacks the car in the beginning with and without music, and it makes a huge fucking difference. It's kind of like the scene with Darth Vader, almost is similar in that sense. But
Don't Fear the Reaper in the movie?
It's in the movie.
Like the car radio. Yeah. Somebody mentioned that in the chat.
And that is because there's a connection between Carpenter and Blue Oyster Cult. I don't remember exactly what it was, but he used to work with the band. I can't remember if I can't remember exactly what he did for him, but
I know they had a big laser show. One of the earliest.
I think that might have had something to do with it. I can't remember, but
he maybe did their stage settings. Yeah,
that's a great.
But like,
scene.
there's plenty of pictures of him with like BOC hats and shit like that. Like he was part of their crew or something.
But does Mike Myers have a theme? I can't remember. Is there a particular theme that he has every time that he's on screen?
Michael, well, you have the standard Halloween theme, which is dun 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 dun, and then Michael has kind of a thing which is just kind of like 3 little notes or whatever. It's just kind of like a dun dun dun, a slower version of it.
Yeah, I think it's the
but it ends
every time
hanging on that.
Yeah,
but it hangs on that sharp note or whatever.
Yeah,
and then it goes dun, and then Lori has her own theme too, which is just a little subtle difference in that. But yeah.
I like how.
But yeah, there's basically like probably about 3 or 4 themes, and then there's the death theme too, which is just the stabbing theme, which is just literally like a stab.
Really reinforced that for future horror movies. Really played on that and had themes.
Definitely.
Yeah, I like the fact that you described in Carpenter in the credits.
See anything you like?
Is the Bowling Green Philharmonic Orchestra?
Yeah, because he's from Bowling Green. Yeah.
We see a Mad Bart again.
No, I didn't need Mad there.
Mad's the one who's in the sheet. Mad's the one who's in the sheet.
I should have put Mad there for
we
fun.
Needed
anyway.
Mad. We needed
I'll go
Mad.
redo that with Mad. Yeah,
come on, where's my beer?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I watched this scene a little bit more than the others when I was a kid. Sue me.
Is that VHS box of yours a bit sticky to open?
No, by then I think I'd seen it plenty of times. But like if you had my old VHS, this scene might look a little bit like the scene in Fast Times like Ridgemont High. It looked in most versions you rented back in the 80s. Yeah.
Funk got on the film of the VHS a little bit.
Just all like windy and ate the shit because it's been viewed 20,000 times.
But this is showing like Myers having some intelligence here too, because he doesn't need to put this costume on, right? Why does he do that? Just to torment? I mean, I think it's
make her more vulnerable.
It's in the script.
It is in the script, but when you think about it, like why would a serial killer put he's unstoppable? Why does he need to put a costume on here and pretend?
Well, he puts Paul's glasses on top of it, which I think is the thing that sells it. But
yeah, but I mean, it's really creepy. It's super creepy. Yeah.
Sorry, just as an aside, we know it was low budget. Didn't Nick Castle only get paid $25 a day or something for doing
something like that?
He did.
Yeah. A lot of the people
on the internet.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't get paid diddly squat for this movie. Yeah. Like, and not only that, they had like 7 jobs.
He did get some free boobs though. He got some.
Yeah, like Jamie Lee Curtis said that she did not realize that like on her next production, she was so used to working when like her next production after Halloween, she thought it was weird because she's like, oh, we're not expected to like carry like the lights and shit, because she went and grabbed like one of the cases and somebody's like, what are you doing?
You know what, they should never have told her, and to this day she should still be doing that.
Like, no, just don't say shit, let's see what happens.
That's right, never ever tell her, ever.
What'd you say, Dustin?
Whether the union would have sued her because she'd have been doing union work.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Yeah, on an actual studio picture, you have the union situation, but yeah,
there'd be much union on this one.
But there was a lot of "Hey, mom, we're making a movie" kind of thing with this movie going on. So yeah, like it was like a frat party every night, from what the stories go, and it was a lot of beer drinking and a lot of smoking and probably a lot of canoodling.
Oh, I'm sure
because this movie was budget, like we said, was $325,000, and it made $60 to $70 million. So talk about
the story
ROI.
of how they got that is hilarious too, because Mustafa Akkad, the guy I brought up earlier, who refuses to allow, he's passed away now. He's actually sadly killed in a terrorist bombing, I believe, in Israel with his daughter back in the early 2000s, but or mid 2000s, I can't remember which. But no, like his whole thing was they came to him for the money. And they're like, we got this movie, we can make it for $100,000. They knew it was going to cost $300,000.
Yep.
But they knew Mustafa and they knew how to play him. And he's like, $100,000 seems like too little. And then like
it's
so
still
then,
$1.4 million worth of money, though. I mean, if you're
at that time, technically, yes. So like his whole thing was basically, yeah, give him $1 million, which would be now the equivalent. But like, so he's like $100,000. That just doesn't sound right. And so they played him up a bit. They're like, well, that seems, maybe that's just too much for Mustafa Akkad. And he's like, are you kidding me? I give you 300,000.
I'll show you that. I'll raise you to 300
because they knew he would, if they played on his pride. So no, maybe he can't afford that. That's too much for him. He would get pissed, and he would go for it.
Well, he made his investment on that one. My God!
Oh God! Yeah,
and then
made
some.
you a much wealthier.
He
man,
has called
sure.
Michael Myers his unofficial son. I mean, he has tons of kids, but like that's his thing. He's like, he is my son. I take care of him like he's a son. I make sure nobody ever kills him. Like that's one of his things. Like yeah.
Well, there's going to be 13 movies. I guess that's going to be the last movie. Knock on wood. I guess when the last.
I don't know. People have been asking me about this. I'm like, I think the title
Halloween
refers
ends.
more to Laurie Strode than it does to Michael Myers.
I agree.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Angel had a very funny comment. Said VHS tapes in the 80s displayed unusual wear at the time stamp of that one scene you're talking about.
Yep.
And also,
this and Fast Times. Yeah.
We got to mention that there's a few different actors for very particular parts for Michael, because you had the face reveal, but you also had there was the falls that Michael did too. There's a stuntman for that stuff. So you had a few different actors, at least 3-4 different actors.
And Deborah Hill even stood in a few times as Michael.
Deborah Hill. So
not once, but twice, I believe. She was young Michael's hands.
Yes, he was.
And then there's the one shot where the kid's about to scare Lindsay and he sees him across the way or whatever. That's actually her. And that's why she looks like like Michael just like is a foot shorter or whatever. But yeah. And like maybe one other scene where he's like walking across the street, I think she might have done too. But
yeah, and there's rumors, nothing that can confirm, but maybe even John Carpenter may have put the suit on at one point, but there's nothing confirmed.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Rumor, and he may have. I mean,
I think there is shots of him with like a suit on, and it could have been for whatever reason. It's hard to say. Like that's the thing, is pretty much anybody who was around who could when they needed him, but Nick Castle was mainly the shape.
Yes, Nick Castle is definitively Myers.
Nick Castle, of course, famously went on to become a director who made well, of course, he made Mr. Wrong with Ellen, and we kind of forgive him for that. But Major Payne, of course, and Last Starfighter, hers two most
Major Payne.
I love,
One piggy.
That will
he in there? Well, he ain't happy.
A Toxic Tuesday one day is Major Payne.
Nick Castle,
absolutely.
Nick Castle had worked with Carpenter before.
And,
way back on Resurrection of Bronco Billy, which was set in the modern day, but the guy, Johnny Crawford, was in it, played a guy who dreamed of being in the Old West. Carpenter had written it.
Well, I think him and Tommy Lee were all friends, if I remember right, like growing up.
So.
Because they ended up making the band that sings the song Big Trouble in Little China for the soundtrack. It's the three of them.
They all went way back, yeah.
Yeah, I think those three had known each other since they were kids or whatever, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Because I know Tommy talks a lot about it, at least since like high school or college or whatever. I know Tommy knew him, but Tommy's another one who was just doing everyday weird stuff he would do, not just he designed the mask, but he dealt with other things too. I think he even stood in as Michael once before too, because I think I'm pretty sure I have a picture of him where he's got the outfit on and not the mask. So one of the most iconic shots right here.
This is one of my favorite shots of the movie, because that's when it really sank in for me. Like, he has arrived, and you all better take notice now, because this is when you really go ahead.
Here's where the movie's also comparable to Jaws too, right? Like, because for the first hour or so is just the build up to that last act of the guys going out in the boat. Well, that's kind of the equivalent of this, even though you just replaced the boat with the houses.
Yes.
But it's like, it's just these kids are just coming face to face now with Michael, and he just goes on a rampage for the next fucking 20 minutes.
Yep.
And now that they finally got to that point, because they built it up for so long with that slow, quiet, somber build, now that he's in attack mode, every part he attacks just feels that much more impactful, because we've been building to him, just like, oh crap, now he's here, and now it's all crazy and hectic. Like,
and it feels like such a bigger part of the movie than it really is. That's the fucked up part.
And it all happens so fast because if you actually like pay attention by time, it all happens fairly quickly. But when you're living in the moment of the movie, it feels like it's happening slower than it actually is because it's actually all happening very fast.
Yeah, it's only a few seconds.
Yeah.
I mean, 20 seconds here, right here. Yep, this scene. It's quick.
Yeah, and then she fights with Michael, and that lasts maybe 3-5 minutes tops. And then she sends the kids off, and it's their final confrontation, and it's all over. But it feels like it's half the movie, but it's really only a third of the film at most.
Oh yeah, another kind of shot where you see her like basically like crying.
That never looked to me like PJ Souls there for some reason. It still doesn't from this angle here. It's her, I guess, but it does not look like her.
That scene where she's crying by the door, and also you see Myers is like his mask, not his body, but just his mask, right?
Oh, I love how his mask just pops up, and that's Dean Cundy
yeah.
again with the lighting.
Right, here
and
we
the
go.
Cinematography.
Oh,
Boom.
what
It's
a
coming up.
shot! What?
And you know
a
how they
shot.
did this? It's a spotlight. And he just slowly opened up the spotlight, and that just slowly caught the mask. And it's just brilliant.
That's the money shot here. Yep.
Oh, dude, that's definitely one of those like frame photo type of shots.
Because he's been there the whole time.
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
Like a shark in the water, right? Just can't see.
So red shirt. I will now that obviously
Although,
I asked you
sorry, I
much
just
earlier.
interrupt.
Go ahead.
Sorry, how does he miss there? Right? How does
She
Michael
just
Myers
turns at the right time. That's why.
Right, I guess I was like, come on,
That's how they kind of choreograph it, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry. To
Like he's
Okay.
going for her middle of her back, and she just happens to turn to the left or whatever, right at the right time.
I want to know, since red shirt is a normie, and maybe Dustin go out there. Like now you're at this point, red shirt. What were you feeling like at this point in the movie? I want to hear your perspective, like of Myers and the killing and the bill. What were your thoughts?
I figured at this point, Jamie Lee Curtis's character Laurie was toast.
Really?
Because nobody had been able to do a thing to protect themselves from or get away from Michael Myers at this point. He's like a force of nature. It's like trying to outrun a tornado. So this set up the, oh my God, what's she going to do now? And the first thing she does is run away, which of course made perfect sense. I mean, that would have been my reaction. Run away.
Yeah.
Sharp, pointy teeth. But it doesn't, there's no humor in it. So, I mean, that doesn't really apply, the Python thing with a rabbit. What it really is that you know now, I mean, I said before that Loomis was setting the stakes for this. Now you understand Laurie is in a life or death situation where it's very much a lot more likely to be death than life. She doesn't stand much of a chance.
Talk about another kind of comic shop. This one here too. Sorry.
Yes. No. Yeah. Coming down the stairs. She's struggling to get out the door. He's still coming down the stairs. This sets up for me what is the scariest part of the movie is how does she deal with this and he keeps coming back and she keeps finding a way to deal, and the cavalry we'll see in a moment.
Well, and I even like noticing echoes into other movies, not just Alien and obviously like movies like Friday the 13th and stuff like that. But I mean, there's a lot of echoes even into the Terminator. Like if you look at Arnie's performance in the Terminator, it is very much Michael Myers.
Yeah.
And that movie is set up like James Cameron has flat out said that it's basically a slasher film.
Right.
Like, I think he's even compared it to Halloween, to be honest with you. But yeah.
Yeah. So this is where the tension reaches the absolute breaking point in this movie. So there was no getting up for a glass of water or some soda or going to the bathroom area. This is like this was played to the end.
All right, killer.
This is always the scene you hopefully come in on too. If worse comes to worse, if you miss the first part of the movie, like you want to see this confrontation anyway. This whole bit here is like the cream resistance or whatever you want to call it.
The cream of the crop.
So
I wanna before I shift it to Dustin, Joe's Atmosphere, who's been killing in the chat, by the way. this great concept. What was really rad about the next part is it's Halloween. If she were screaming for help on any other day of the year, someone would definitely call the cops. And that's a very good point, dude. That's a really damn good point.
Well, not only that, what's funny is when she goes to the neighbor's house and they shut the lights off on her. That's actually technically against the law now. You can't do that. Like, you could get in trouble in some states. Yeah,
but they were out of candy.
All right, Dustin.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? I mean, now that you were at the majority of the movie, like what had to have been running in your mind?
Well, I think seeing it now and seeing so many other horror movies that came after this, understanding that this came first or was one of the first, as far as I'm aware, movies in the genre.
Yeah.
You see all the things, you see like, how slow and methodical Michael Myers is. That translates into other franchises where they're slow, methodical, don't talk, whatever. And then there's like, like the weird things like, oh, why is she screaming and they turn the lights off? It's supposed to be a small town. She's supposed to know everybody. They're supposed to know her. Because that's like her neighbor, right? Would be like her neighbor. She lives across the street.
Well, it's the neighbor of the parent, and like, I think it's more so that it's a Halloween prank.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can see that too, but also, in the late 70s, what was Halloween night like in small town America?
Exactly.
I don't really know, but
that's the thing is like, and they have that thing in the beginning of the next movie too, where the guy's like, I've been trick-or-treated to death tonight. Like, because even Loomis had a hard time dealing with the guy too. It's like, you have no idea what death is, mister. Like, so this whole town has no idea what just hit it kind of thing too. That's another thing.
Oh, anyway, yeah.
But I mean, okay, in my town, there were 2 nights. The night before Halloween was known as Mischief Night. And that's when trees would get toilet papered, houses would get egged, and leaves that had been raked to the street would be set on fire. That was the biggest problem. The fire department had to be called out for that.
I don't think we'd go to that extent, but we did do the other things. Maybe bash some mailboxes, but that's about it. Yeah.
Right. But the thing is that, at the end of the evening of Halloween, the little kids are all gone home because they were told be back by 7, 8, 9, whatever. And if somebody came to the door at, say, 10 o'clock, it was probably teenagers trying to stretch mischief night out one more night. So I could see where her neighbors would have expected, because she was screaming in panic. So probably didn't sound. Her neighbors probably didn't recognize her voice. So I don't know. I mean, I would think you would recognize that's actually.
Well, and they kind of do set something up to that effect with when Brackett's outside of the drugstore, and he's like, somebody came in and stole a mask and a knife and just a couple other things. Probably a couple of fucking teenagers. Clearly setting up this idea that Brackett's already kind of prepared for the night to be full of shenanigans.
Right.
That's a good one. Sorry, guys. You're doing a great job describing the movie.
No, that was pretty good.
That did a nice job. I mean, that's good.
That's really good, actually.
Oh, man. But there was an incident, it's probably been 20, 25, 30 years ago now, that was similar. This one girl was like banging on somebody's house. It might even happened in Illinois, Nick. I can't remember where it happened, but it was somewhere around here. Yeah, after that, some states enlisted a law that you can't do that. You can't ignore somebody who's yelling and screaming for help like that.
Well, it was the famous murder and killing in New York City where
maybe it was
Kitty Genovese, and there's something. There's also a story that, or technically, they think that was kind of made up and it wasn't as bad as it was. But the good thing was that, as horrible as that was, it did change some laws and open people up to, someone who was needed help. But even today, most of the time, you see someone, something bad's happening, the first thing people do is they grab their freaking cell phone and they're they're doing a vertical and they're doing a goddamn vertical
instead of
video.
calling 911. Yeah.
If I ever see someone on the news with a horizontal video, I'm gonna go play the lottery. That's like,
that drives me nuts.
I can't see anything. But yeah, it's like you got to help the person first, not.
Well, these days you got to get your TikTok.
Yeah, gotta get my TikToks on the murder.
Yeah, I'm streaming live on TikTok. This motherfucker getting killed. Look at this shit. Oh my God, he got stabbed 12 times.
It's just
Tommy,
remember
hold
80 people.
the phone for me.
Oh shit, let me flip this around. Good Samaritan laws. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. Thank you, Ted. But yeah, and it's funny though. I gotta ask real quick because we kind of decided we weren't going to get too deep into the sequels, but this was posited by Gary Ambrosia the other day on Twitter, and I agree with it. That I wish they would have went and allowed Carpenter to do what he wanted to do originally, because that's when I talked to Tommy Lee Wallace. I asked him flat out, I'm like, do you think that the Halloween franchise would have been something completely different to this day, but yet still thriving had they just gone with the idea at Halloween 2 and allowing it to be just an anthology series instead? And he's like, yeah, but Universal insisted on it being a direct sequel to the first film, to the point where they actually wound up in court. John Carpenter basically got sued into writing the second film due to a contractual obligation. And there's a whole mess to it. I'm not going to get into the whole conversation about it, but Gary had proposed, and I think this would have been the right way to do it. He said, what would you guys think if The Fog would have ended up being Halloween 2 instead? And then Halloween 3 being Season of the Witch, and so on down the road. Yeah. I agree. That would have been amazing. All you'd have had to change was you just set The Fog on Halloween instead of in April.
I just think that Michael Myers is such an iconic looking character. There's no way that would have ever happened. Obviously, it didn't happen.
You're right. You're 100% right. But I mean, just in like an alternate universe,
I think it would have been easier to accept if that was the route that The Fog was to, because that way we would not been invested with Myers for 2 straight movies. We would just saw it as each Halloween movie is their own Halloween story, not Michael Myers' Halloween. It's just
you could have had a sequence of films with Michael Myers called something other than Halloween.
Well, because that's what I said.
So it's like creating a universe.
Well, the beauty of it is you could have always brought Michael back later on too, and that's what Tommy and I kind of waxed about a little bit. And he's like, "Yeah, that's what I wanted to do." He's like, "I got asked to do Halloween 2, and I flat out turned it down." And I said, "Why?" And he goes, and this actually got a write up, which is kind of cool for me, but he's like, "Oh, well, the main reason is I would have done something more like H2O. I would have jumped years ahead." He's like, "I wouldn't have done the same fucking night. Like, that was dumb."
But I wonder though, like at this time in 1978, sequels still, when I think we talked about this last week, but
they weren't
sequels weren't a thing, really.
Not normally, especially having just the title in a part 2 and stuff like that was especially not normal. But
so do you think Jaws 2 helped push that forward?
Oh yeah, between Jaws 2 was a big part of it. Like Jaws 2 changed that game big time. I mean, you had some series like Planet of the Apes, and they even tried to do Exorcist 2, which fell flat on its fucking face. And there was other films. Godfather 2 is probably the only other exception, but like that was where Coppola insisted on it being part 2, and people understanding that this is still technically the same story, because they did pull a lot of stuff from the first novel into the movie. So like that was kind of an exception to the rule, and otherwise you just had like spin-off characters, or they would give it a completely different name and it'd only be tangentially connected to the other films. Like you had that kind of a thing, or like a Dirty Harry kind of thing where they really just reset it every time. So I know we talked about Dirty Harry last week, where there's really nothing that ties one Dirty Harry film to another.
No,
they're all separate.
They're very episodic. Yeah. So at this time, like, to have a movie, and Rocky was another one too that we hadn't brought up yet. Rocky 2, people forget, was a big fucking deal. And then Rocky 3, even bigger. And then Rocky 4, even bigger.
Yeah.
So like between
Rocky 5,
between a lot of that stuff, between Rocky, Halloween, Friday the 13th, this idea of a Police Academy, even people forget about bringing that into the mix, because Police Academy is the equivalent of the Friday the 13th franchise for a comedy, right? And every year they knocked one of those bitches out. Well, Airplane, but like Friday, but that's what I mean. Like Police Academy, they'd literally knock one of those out every fucking year, just like Friday the 13th. It was like clockwork. You knew you were going to get one.
Well, what became a good anthology series was actually Friday the 13th, the TV show. I don't know if anyone
it should. Yeah, that was a way different than the movies.
Way different, totally.
You can't
nothing.
Kill the boogeyman.
But it was good. I love this. They're always trying to find a cursed item every week. So and of course,
it's kind of X-Files before X-Files. And
the lead actress in that was very hot.
Yeah. Airplane was making fun of a franchise because
Yes.
the
Airplane movies, yep.
movies,
Or airport, I mean, sorry.
yeah, the airport movies. I mean, there was literally one every year for like 4 years, and they got worse and worse, and they finally. That's part of the reason that
they started badly and got worse. Yeah.
They started badly. It started badly. It got worse, which is why it got lampooned so successfully by Airplane. But Hollywood had in the 70s at least, they had the idea of doing. Oh, if one was good, two will be even better. And it wasn't always
especially
successful.
if you throw some money at it.
Yeah.
Well, they could kind of bank on making at least close to half, right? Like if they could make half of what the original made, that was considered a success.
It wasn't a new idea. I mean, there'd been serial movies for years in the old days.
Oh, absolutely. Even going back to the Universal films and all that stuff.
Right.
Hammer had 7 Dracula movies and 8 Frankensteins, and
that was based on the Universal films having God knows how many too.
But hey, let's make another one. Let's keep it going.
See, but those kind of movies were made kind of in the same vein as the serials at the time too, right? Like because they kind of almost took the place of that. Because before that, you had like the Buck Rogers serials and all that kind of stuff, and then that gave way to the B movie, which eventually became this kind of stuff. And Halloween was just one of those movies that rose above. And not only did it rise above, it's in the pantheon with movies like we've already mentioned, like Exorcist and stuff like that of the area, where this is considered, like even Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel, who were just so against horror movies, and even to a point where I that's one of the few times where I feel like they went overboard was like the Friday the 13th franchise and some of that stuff. They would still praise the fuck out of the first Halloween. Like Roger Ebert famously was one of the only critics besides Gene Siskel at that time. And when it originally came out, they gave it a good review and didn't change their review later on. This was one of those movies where historically
they got it right.
Critics went back and they revisited Halloween and like, oh, well, maybe we misinterpreted this movie, especially after John Carpenter became like the new flavor of the town. Right. Mm-hmm. Like when it first came out, they dismissed it as just another fucking, B movie. But Roger Ebert and those guys are like, no. There's something about this movie, the way it's shot, the way it's paced. There's something different about this. And that's where John Carpenter really showed who he was with this film. Like this is to me is John Carpenter's most raw film. Sure, he did some movies before this. We know he's done tons of shit after this. But to me, Halloween is like quintessentially like, if you want to show somebody in 100 years from now who John Carpenter was, this is the first thing you show them.
Oh, absolutely. By a landslide. And this is what Carpenter
and then maybe
right,
like the Thing or something like that for a second film. But like, this is the first thing you fucking show them right off the bat, because this is the establishing groundwork right here. Not just for John Carpenter, but for every fucking horror movie to come out for the next 20 years, all the way up to Scream, which this movie had a lot to do with. As much as Psycho had to do with this, that had to do with Scream had to do with this that much more. So yeah.
Well, we were watching Scream just before I came on this.
Oh, nice. Yeah. That's a good movie.
You've got Nightmare on Elm Street, you've got Friday the 13th, and you've got Scream that all owe this film and then
very much so.
Yeah.
And Nightmare on Elm Street, is a kind of its own little animal, but it does. You're right. Like in the sense of the independent feature film wise of taking a horror film seriously. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I like at this shot. This is where we realized that Michael Myers had a choice to either go after the kids or go after Laurie, and he still chose Laurie. And Laurie went her own way away from the kids. I was like, I don't know about that. You let the kids to themselves. Like, what if Myers went that direction? You end up way in that room.
Well, she's counting on the fact she's going to come after her, not after the kids, so the kids will be safe then.
And she also had the presence of mind to open the door to the whatever it is, the deck outside, and then go for the closet, like trying to leave a trail that she'd left the room. And he doesn't.
But she makes the biggest mistake in horror movies.
Yeah.
She invented the trope right here.
I like with the trope the way it looks and shot. It makes
this iconic scene.
It makes you feel. It makes you feel like you're stuck in it because the way it's like it makes you feel condensed in that space with her, and you're like, oh crap, you're stuck in that little nook right there with her. Like,
well, this whole last bit is very well at doing it, like this thing where it's kind of like with Night of the Living Dead. where you kind of just get slowly creeped into a corner and the movie starts feeling more and more claustrophobic.
Yeah,
the last 20 minutes of that does that very well in this.
It makes you feel trapped in there with her in that moment.
Yeah. Isn't this the last girl alive trope, which of course we're so used to now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I brought that up earlier that Laurie is the prototype for that. Yeah, and basically is the prototype for all coming up to like Sarah Connor and stuff like that. Like I brought up earlier, because I'm pretty sure there's an interview out there where James Cameron talks a lot about how Halloween inspired Terminator.
They've also got the teenagers should never have sex trope.
Yeah,
because they get killed immediately afterwards.
She just happened to be the virgin of the group, but like at that time they didn't think of it from that perspective, but it definitely did begin that trope. Yes. And the reason is a lot of times is the girl that's not having sex and all that shit, she just happens to be paying more attention than anybody else, and usually they set that girl up as the most responsible one. So it's not so much like the sin factor came in later, I think, more so than anything. But like at the time, like those that were setting this whole idea, I don't think they were thinking of that kind of an idea.
Just like to say to Joe in the chat and E-Clay, Dark Star, brilliant movie. Love that movie.
Which is funny because the guy who wrote that with John Carpenter and shit went on to write Alien.
It's Dan O'Bannon. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's in it. He acts in it as well.
I love Dark Star. It's
but
hilarious.
Also the bouncing beach ball was Tommy Lee Wallace from this.
Yes.
Is that his name?
Yep.
Yeah. He did the bouncing beach ball stuff in that.
Yeah, a bunch of the people that ended up working on this worked on a lot of. See, that's the thing. Carpenter kept a really tight knit group.
He did.
Sure, some people graduated on to other things like becoming directors, and like I said, Dean Cundy went on to be one of the most celebrated cinematographers of all time. But yeah, and this is true, Glinzer. At least until Halloween 6, anyway.
Oh, dude,
doomed to being a virgin forever. No wonder he's killing people.
Well, that's why. This is why I say it's a toxic movie, because he's been chasing Laurie for X amount of years. I'm like, that is really bizarre form of commitment. Toxic.
So is it just an incel then, right?
Yeah, I guess he's the long run incel.
He's an incel. He's got a mask.
Now, just not to interrupt here, but this is an actual line that's lifted directly in Scream. I want you to go down to the Mackenzie's house, and I want you to call the police. That's what they tell. That's what Casey Becker's dad tells. Casey Becker's mother in the beginning of the movie.
And then she runs outside and screams.
I don't know, Tom, by you, but out by me, they do the local theater by me. They do anniversaries for when movies come out. They're on the 20 or 25th anniversary, and they got one for Scream. And stuff like I Know What You Did Last Summer, and it's cool that we get to see those movies in the cinematic experience. Like X amount of years, they recently did Jaws recently out here as well for the anniversary as well. Yeah.
Well, that got a national release, actually. Jaws did, but
yeah, no, it did.
Yeah, it did.
No, but
it actually did very well considering.
It did. No, and I would expect
did almost as well as Avatar, to be honest with.
Chernobyl. I will check Gilded after the show.
Fuck you, Gilded.
I know we're going back a little bit. The only thing was getting a GIF that Joe had sent us, but the closet thing, the one thing I didn't like about it is, it's really scary. It's like it's one of those flimsy ass closets that with the slats you can see through. It's like he can lift the guy up with one arm or move this tombstone. It's like that closet ain't stopping anyone.
Shouldn't have been a problem.
Yeah, but it's all for the tension. Show him slowly getting through there. But of course, walking by, if you had a solid door, that scene wouldn't work, right? Because you wouldn't see Michael Myers walking by the closet. But that's a minor nitpick. But
and we missed one of the other iconic scenes here where he raised up, which we've seen ripped off how many times, like in here, just like the Undertaker scene. Exactly, Brian.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is that real? That would make a lot of sense, because I remember when I first saw the Undertaker do that, and I remember seeing Myers get up. I'm like,
did you guys see the little kid, the clip on Twitter that somebody posted recently? The kid was running around dressed as Michael Myers. He fell down on the hay bales.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
And then he gets up just like he does in the movies, and all the other kids go running. I'm like, that kid is cool. That kid is cool. He knows what he's doing.
That's a good one.
Oh, the other clip that other mistake in the movie that was I forgot to point it out, even though he clipped it, was that they leave the van door open when the guy's going to can't remember the
Michael
character's
Myers'
name.
face.
Yeah, there you go. And he's but he actually leaves the van door open going in, when he goes to the other house, the two characters that are having sex. Well, I forgot to mention when it went by, but he just carries when he carries the girl into the house, the doors open in the van.
Yeah.
The shag
One
van.
other mistake.
Yeah, they never
that I
shut the
saw
van door.
Continuity was early on when Lori first is walking home with her friend, and then she gets to her house. When we cut to the scene of her walking up to her house, the road, the driveway, and the sidewalk are all wet, like it's just rained. But it hasn't rained all the way back from all the way.
Which is funny. You know what's funny is you mentioned that, Red Shirt. They picked up on that in the second film, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. They actually say something like, if you hear in the passing, I think it's the background, like in the radio, you can hear him say something like the rain quit earlier, but we won't see more until like Thursday or something like that in the background.
Yeah.
Like because they had another scene in part 2 where the street is all wet. Yep. And they needed a way to explain that away. They're like, fuck. So they just added it in an ADR later on. Yeah.
It could have been a sprinkler, yeah. I think
nowadays in movies, like nighttime shots in movies, the ground, like the street's always wet.
They do that on purpose just for aesthetic, yeah.
Yeah, every scene has always wet pavement, right? It's like nothing's ever dry.
There is one other major error in this movie. Jamie Lee Curtis isn't topless the entire movie.
I was waiting for you to say that.
She in this movie, though?
She's only.
When do we get to see Jamie
movie.
Lee's boobs? Not until 1983, Trading Places.
I know.
She didn't show her tits until she went legit.
What about the movie Perfect? What would you give that movie? What rating would you give that one?
Perfect 2.
It was such a hard. We all went to see it with our
one
buddies.
star for each tit.
We went to see that movie with our buddies. We're like, this is the worst movie we've ever seen.
Fucking horrible.
Except for watching Jamie Lee Curtis doing aerobics in the 80s for a couple hour and a half. But what a disaster that movie was. I want my $5 back.
Almost as bad as Staying Alive.
So you've now got everyone in the chat Googling the Trading Places.
Trading Places. Yeah.
I shot him 6 times.
Just that scene.
Oh, this chat is hilarious.
I'm sorry, that's my favorite line in part 2. I shot him 6 times.
Why is he back? Yeah.
That's another great thing about Loomis. He's for a doctor. He's packing heat.
Yeah.
He's
a good shot too. He shot the motherfucker 6 times.
Center mass.
With 7 shots. Out of a 6 shooter.
Lucky, punk?
Which I think that's actually in the sequel where he shoots 7 times. But
yeah. No, he shot 6 times because I counted. I always do.
Yeah, it's the second one they fuck up and they add an extra shot.
Yep. Yeah. Here's the boogeyman. Here's the boogeyman.
They have got some 4K shots of Jamie Lee Curtis in Trading Places.
If you got the digital version, yeah. If you got the digital version,
in 4K.
70s is going to be really quiet for the next few minutes,
which I do have.
I gotta
Why
say,
is he being so quiet?
Look, my hands are in full view. Okay.
And Monkey Jeebus, he failed because he makes the same mistake Dewey does in the latest Scream movie. You go for the fucking head, Dewey. That's why.
Thor made the same mistake too.
Yeah. Go for the head, Thor.
You guys are killing me.
Go for the head.
And just like that, you realize not only is he gone, but it's one of those like he's anywhere, he's everywhere. You can feel his presence. He is the Halloween presence.
He's everywhere and nowhere.
Yeah, everywhere. Thank you, 70s. You said
and
it
he
best.
did it 2 different ways, but they kept in this way, which is I knew he'd be gone. The other way was, oh no, he's gone, which is weird because the second film has the oh no, he's gone take in it.
Damn,
it's a different take. Yeah, like about a good third of that second film is different takes and new shots. Yeah, because they actually have a shot of Michael falling from the balcony and stuff. Yeah.
All right, chat. Yeah. This is literally probably there's like a scene or 2 left, but in the credits roll. But give your scores. You know how this goes. I think I saw a few new faces here. We rate this movie on 1 to 10 and how much you love it, and then 1 to 10 toxicity. I am curious to see where the toxicity is going to hit. Go ahead, Red Shirt.
I got a question. One more thing that I'm trying to see if this is a mistake, and it's in the credits, and I have it here also on IMDb. There are 3 actors credited as playing Michael
Myers. That's normal.
Michael
That's
Myers.
Right. That's correct.
Okay, so there's Tom Tommy Lee Wallace is Michael Myers uncredited.
Yes.
There's, I think the guy who's the Shape. Yeah, Nick Castle is the Shape. Then there's Will Sandon as Michael Myers, age 6, and Tony Moran as Michael Myers, age 23.
That's
okay, wait a minute,
one when we see his face.
Right. But the problem is that the timeline we got was that he killed his sister in 63. 15 years later in 1978, and he was 6. So 15 years later in 1978, he'd be 21.
Well, math is very hard. Math is hard. If you remember that Barbie doll. So, yep, that's what I'll explain that away.
Well, Peter Griffith is in this movie. That's cool.
Well, it's actually now math is illegal. If you didn't see my Twitter, they busted a math lab. It's been upgraded from racist to now illegal.
Illegal. Oh, okay.
Did you hear about the organic chemistry professor that got fired because his class was too tough and people were potential doctors were flunking the class? So it's like I really hope that I get some of those doctors someday that flunked a college class and their parents had to call because their fifis were hurt and they flunked. So yeah, that's the kind of people I want to be doctors. Yep.
Yeah.
And organic chemistry does suck, by the way. But yeah, if you can't get through it, maybe
it's
you should
just
be
ridiculous,
a doctor.
isn't it?
Yeah.
They evidently fixed it in the sequel. They just probably got it wrong in the credits.
I probably did.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna.
They were stoners. If anybody knows anything about John Carpenter, that motherfucker smokes so much pot, like he probably makes Snoop Dogg go, "God damn."
That's hilarious.
No, he's like perpetually stoned.
No, you're right. Abigor, 9 out of 10. Channel Surf, 9 out of 3. Another Monster, 8 out of 10 for film, 6 out of 10 Toxic, but I'm a weirdo. Randall Lorser, overall 9 out of 10.
Leave it with the one with Mad.
Yeah, that's good.
6 titties out of 10. Yeah, just leave it at that shot. Vince Womack, overall 7.7. Toxicity 6. Gen Xer, it wasn't toxic at all, 7 out of 10 as a movie. And then Joe's Atmosphere, Toxicity, 5 out of 10 boobs and teenage drinking. No big. Overall, my favorite film of the genre. You don't need blood to scare people. I agree. Carpenter proved it. Spinal Tap score, 11 out of 10. Damn.
This one goes to 11.
And it did. And then deleted scenes, overall 10. Toxicity, 4. And unless more scores pop up, I will read them. But as of now, we will. Oh, a Jeffo. Hey, what's up, Jeffo? Overall,
Jeffo.
8. Toxicity, 9. Woo, coming in hot and high with 9. All right. Well, you know what? Mark, why don't you sign off on your final thoughts?
Sure, yeah. So thank you. Yep. So I don't think it's a very toxic movie. So I agree with Joe there. I'd give it about a 5, yeah, just for the the teenage stuff. And I think, God, were they actually smoking pot in that car? Or was that just cigarettes? Can you imagine that, having that in a movie? Wow. But yeah, and there's no blood and gore, which I like because that kind of gets. I'm a big wimp, so that gets me kind of squeamy too. But it's all the setup of the movie. So I give this a 9.5. I think it's one of the great horror movies out there. It's in the like a Hitchcockian movie in terms of the build up, the suspense, and you don't need all that stuff to have a good movie. It's like a comedian doesn't need to swear to be funny, right? It's always nice to throw in those F-bombs, but you don't have to do it. You don't need all this CGI and special effects. And I mean, I think this is the best of the bunch. I think the first one, although some of the later ones, obviously, recent ones were able to recapture some of that magic, but. Yeah, just a great movie, and yeah, it's great to watch at Halloween, and it just shows you how you can do some great work on a shoestring budget. Like look at us on YouTube. We don't have a what's our budget for the show? Is it $300,000?
You have a budget?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we spent the last of the petty cash, but yeah, I mean, just we're having a lot of fun here, hanging out, and we got 50, 60 people in the chat. Hanging out, having a great time, with, we're making it all ourselves. And Carpenter was doing that. Look how talented, he did the score. I mean, phenomenal directing and got it all to work. And Jamie Lee Curtis actually found out she didn't have to move shit around on her next movie because the first one made so much money. So yeah, just an all-time classic that you just gotta watch every Halloween.
All right, killer. I'm gonna read a few more scores here. Gareth Morgan, 9 out of 10 classical. Mecha J, 10 out of 10 toxicity. Toxicity, 5 out of 10, 10 out of 10 for regular. Brian Hepburn, 10 out of 10 overall for film and soundtrack, 4 out of 10 toxicity. And then Mr. Angel says 9.9 out of 10, one of the great classics of the genre. I hear that, sir. How much are waffle crisps? That's the budget.
Waffle crisps and beer.
Yeah. Do you put beer in your waffle crisp, or do you have milk in your waffle crisp?
Well, that depends on if you have a little extra for milk. Yeah.
That was amazing, Randall. All right. Well, that was all right. Tom, why don't you give out your final thoughts?
Well, I could go on and on about this movie for days as far as like the trivia of it all. There's so much I didn't even get to, and I would love to share more. But just a few tidbits that I didn't get to bring up throughout that I thought were interesting, of course. The movie shot for 20 days, 2 of which were shooting the opening scene, the opening one single shot. Of course, as we mentioned, Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee were approached to play the role of Dr. Loomis and turned them down.
Lee regretted it.
Yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis was the only one who got a budget for her wardrobe. She actually got to go to JCPenney and got a whole $100.
Wow.
She spent some of her time in that wardrobe towards the end of the movie.
I think she got to keep her clothes too.
She was hiding in it.
But yeah, no, like this is a great film. 10 out of 10 as far as a film. I mean, it's there's so much about this film that we could talk about for hours, and hours on how it influenced everything going forward, how it kind of opened up a whole new avenue for horror films in a way. I mean, even though this wasn't technically the first of its kind in a sense, it definitely was the first to take all those things and put it together, and just mix it just right. And I mean, the comparisons to Jaws are so spot on. We bring it up left and right. Even the music is very comparable to Jaws. The simplicity of it, right? Because the music isn't that really that complicated. It's just a simple beat mainly, and the music is just 2 notes for the most part, and then just shifted up the scale, and mixed with an odd bass line, which kind of just feels off, and it makes you feel uneasy, and that's the whole point of the music, and that's where John is just brilliant with that, and able to invoke so much with just the music, which again, hearkening back to Jaws, what John Williams was able to do with just 2 notes again, with just da dun da dun da dun da dun. Same kind of thing with Halloween, and he just takes it up the scale, same kind of difference, and it's that primal thing about it. And same thing with Michael, he's just very primal. There's something about him that whatever it was that made him snap, he's just like, you just kind of figure he's just got the instincts of a caveman at this point, basically, kind of thing, and he's off the rails, and just the character, you could invoke so much into him, but he's just so inhuman at the same time. There's, he's just that much unstoppable, not quite indestructible, but unstoppable is, a better way to put it. And Jamie Lee Curtis's performance and Donald Pleasance's performance, again, like I said before, it's his most iconic role considering how many roles he's had throughout the years. And a part of me will always associate Jamie Lee Curtis with this role, even though she's played many other roles. She's played this role more times than any.
By a landslide.
And she's done different versions of it, but yeah. Go ahead. What you're saying, Brian?
No, I was just saying she owns this. I think of her too, and I think of Halloween when I think of Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah, very much so. She's very, very synonymous with it. I mean, she is technically the face if you don't count, this beautiful white bastard to my right here. But
she's the human face.
Yeah, as far as toxicity, this is probably one of the lower level toxicity films. I'll say the toxicity is just more in the give a fuck attitude of like just, hey mom, we're making a movie kind of thing about it. And the throw, caution to the wind kind of thing aspect of it. PJ Soul's character is brilliant in her in her performance. So if anything, like her, she's toxic, more toxic than any of the men in the movie.
Oh yeah,
she's the most
PJ's
toxic character
yeah.
probably. PJ Souls character with the whole, go give me a beer. You know, her character just kind of, you can tell she's the lead chick, right? Like she's the bad bitch. And no, like as far as toxicity, yeah, there's not really anything to hang anything toxic on the movie per se, other than just, I guess, Michael Myers and his penchant for killing, you know, young women, I guess. But it's not just women. He goes after a lot of people. The only thing it seems like he won't do is kill a kid. So, no, other than that, I mean, just on a movie level, again, it's iconic as fuck. 10 out of 10. Toxicity level, yeah, I'm more on the 5 out of 10 kind of range. Even though this may not necessarily be the most toxic movie, it does still fit because it's definitely one of those movies that guys love. And not just guys, but I mean, you know, it fits in that that kind of area to where, you know, it just set off a whole, let's just say a lot of us have probably gotten laid because of a horror movie over the years. We owe a lot to Halloween.
Well, actually, I think, Tom, you're right. This is a great date night movie, if you ask me.
Exactly. And that's what I mean by it kind of started a whole new kind of franchise in a way, even though it's horror, like we brought up The Exorcist and Tom. That's why I said it's different, right? The Exorcist is a kind of movie that, you know, you wouldn't necessarily go on a date. Halloween is a date movie. It's a naked movie. So.
Yeah,
that's
but then
exactly what it is.
After, aren't you worried about Michael Myers showing up in your bedroom and taking you out?
Yeah, to a point. But even Mustafa Akkad, that's clearly what he, I mean, you listen to it because he's a really charming guy. He flat out said, no, but I mean, just in all seriousness, like he said, this is the kind of movie that you go to see with the girl and she grabs onto you and you hold and hug her, and, you know, because he's Israeli, so he has an accent and stuff like that. But and English is a second language, but just the way he's putting it. And he's like, and you get to kiss and get close. And it's the girls and the teenagers love these kind of movies because it gets them to get close. And so he didn't know, he knew exactly what he was doing.
Oh yeah.
Right. Like, and he kept that going for you. So he didn't really kind of make it like, oh yeah, Michael Myers is this thing that's way beyond and all pretentious and egotistical about it and all this hubris. No, he knew exactly what he's doing, but he also knows it was a necessity, right? Like you need Michael Myers, you need these kind of movies. These kind of movies make babies. That's kind of his whole point. Like this is just a natural part of life. You know, it's it's an extension of us telling the ghost stories around the campfire kind of thing too, in a way, which I think Friday the 13th really encapsulated very well. But yeah, no, I love this film. It's a hallmark. It's a seminal moment in movies. I'm sorry I dominated this show, but this is one of my favorite films of all time.
I get, dude, when you're excited. You're excited. I feel your energy. I feel your energy when you do this. I love it. It definitely keeps me entertained. I love listening to your perspective.
And I'm sure I'll have to buy it again in holographic HD, whatever
VR,
comes out
HD,
next.
brain,
VR,
chip in the brain, yeah.
Because I've bought in every version since.
Michael Myers.
Anyway,
VR chip.
We got a few. Rob Altus says lurk mode, but toxicity over 6, overall 8.5. And Massgrave was not a fan, says gave it a 0. Worst of all, slashers. Hey, sorry you didn't like it, but I guess us gentlemen here on the panel.
Thanks for being here anyway, though.
Yeah, thanks for listening. So
I don't know why he says I'm wrong. That was just my opinion. As far as the rest, there's pretty much proof. So,
yeah. I mean,
he's right.
The thing is, even if you don't like the movie, the fact is, it is a very, very influential movie. Like that, its influence is undeniable. So even if you don't like it, a lot of slashers that showed up late in the world, they definitely took a bite or two from this, and that's just the truth. But hey, I'd say he's trolling.
Oh, he's just trolling me?
Yeah. I was going to say, if loving Tom is wrong, then I don't want to be right.
Well, I was just going to say, like, I mean, if I said something wrong, please correct me. But I mean, as far as like my opinion, I'm like,
another monster.
Well, I mean, this isn't a really graphic slasher.
Massgrave is cool. Another monster. It's all good. He's
all good.
He's fucking with us. Yes.
Yeah. But I mean, this isn't one of those.
No need to get heated. No need to get heated here.
But this isn't one of those gory slashes that came after too. So I mean, but this is The Godfather, really, then shows you how you don't need all that stuff. But
yeah,
some
well, that's
the
kind of the
later
problem with the second film, right? Like, and beyond that, yeah, those things infected the franchise.
Yeah, the
Sorry,
body count gets the body count goes sky high, or other movies that you watch, like any name of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, of course, came before that was far more graphic, but
even that's
late
not as bad as people remember either. But yeah,
yeah, well, meat hooks, I have a problem with that.
oh yeah,
Ever since yeah, so I mean, so there's some stuff that just
but that one's a little more
there's some
bloodier.
stuff
But
that sticks with you. Oh, that was a bad pun, but
a little bit, yeah. No,
yeah.
I hear you there. But no, like you're right, 100%. I agree with you on that. Like,
Yeah.
as far as like the graphic nature, like even though part 2 suffers from the Halloween curse of making every movie a slasher fest, there's still a lot that I love in the second film. I know it's not a favorite of John Carpenter's, but it has some of the best kills in the franchise too. So
Yeah,
I
like
don't know.
Final Destination. I'm trying to think. It's like modern slasher type, with gory deaths, or
Yeah.
that
Saw
kind of stuff.
franchise.
Saw, yeah. So and there's intelligence behind a lot of those movies too, and but I mean, some people just can't handle that gore too. So this is one of those movies where if you could maybe get by watching, if get scared shitless with, even if you don't you don't want to be surrounded by all that gore.
Well,
So,
Halloween was the funny one because even though I was into like all the slasher films and stuff growing up, Halloween was one of those few that like some of my older relatives would be like, "Oh, well, Halloween, that's a different movie."
I know a lot of people who are like that, who are not really into horror or slasher. And to me, like, I don't see Halloween as a slasher first. I just see it as a regular horror movie first. Now, I definitely feel like the sequels were definitely full on slasher, because this movie was more about, once again, the mystery, the aura of building up to the moment, the Jaws moment, basically the less is more thing. It was about being in the presence of his madness. So
yeah,
I
well,
feel like
this
that
and
was
Nightmare
more
on Elm
horror.
Street were 2 franchises that really kind of did that, because that's what was like weird about it. Because what's funny is when I bought this specific set here, I was in college at the time when it came out, and I was living with my cousins who happened to be older, so they're more like aunt and uncle. Basically, I grew up with them my whole life, more like that. And my aunt's like, "Oh, Halloween, I love that movie." I'm like, "Really?" Because she hated slasher films and stuff like that. Like, the only other horror movie she liked was the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, and that was because of the more fantasy element. But that was kind of the first experience I ever had with like, oh, somebody who's not into horror movies actually likes this. And then from there on out, whenever I bring up Halloween, even if somebody wasn't into like the Friday the 13th, they're like, "Oh, I hate that schlocky shit." They'd be like, "Halloween's different. Like, that's a different kind of movie." And John Carpenter's a big part of that, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. No, he's an essential part of that, dare I say. That's somebody's rock fan.
You dare say. You just said it.
Well, I'm going to interject here. The movie's playing right now. If you look up on Fandango, it's playing on Halloween. It's playing Halloween night, and for the next couple of nights too. So there's a link, if I don't know, depending where you live, but check it out. You can see it in the movie theater.
Oh, sweet.
There you go.
So,
there you go.
Is it my turn?
Yes, sir.
Tom said an awful lot there, and I wish I'd been listening.
Sorry about that, Brian.
No, I'm just kidding. I may have been able to steal some of his words, because that was pretty good. I'll deal with the toxicity first, because that's the easy part. I don't think it's that toxic. I would only say 5 out of 10. I guess the most toxic thing about it from today's perspective would be that it's a non-diverse, non-intersectional suburbia, if I could put it that way. So that would be seen as toxic. But in other words, I don't think it's that particularly a toxic movie. Such, which is weird when you consider it's supposed to be a horror or slasher movie. But I do agree with Mr. Angel that I don't see it as much as a slasher movie, as more of a Hitchcockian psychological suspense movie with some slashing in it, if I could put it that way. And I think it's a seminal movie, like Psycho was in the horror genre, though. I think it reinvigorated and repopularized what could be done with horror, made it mainstream again. The massive success of it made it mainstream. It was beautifully filmed, expertly written, simple and to the point. There was nothing, there was no fancy trickery required, no lengthy exposition of what he was up to. He just stalked these people and got in there. Brilliantly acted as well. In fact, I'm finding it hard to think of an equivalent. This is 78. I think Black Christmas might be the closest equivalent in the 70s of a slasher type movie.
Yeah,
well, that was kind of the prototype, and it was. There is some connections between that and this, and Halloween does owe a lot to that.
It does owe a lot, but I think this does it a lot better. It's a classy
absolutely
movie. Halloween is a classy movie. I absolutely love John Carpenter. I don't think, and it basically set the template for decades to come. So it's an important movie from that perspective. Horror isn't necessarily my number one genre. It's certainly one of my all-time favorites, so probably in the top 3 or 4 in that genre. So I'm going to give it a 9.5 out of 10.
Ooh, all right. Well said, 70s. Well said. Dustin.
So it's my turn to be long-winded then. Okay.
You have to outdo Tom, whatever you do.
I got to get to bed, man.
Oh yeah, you got to get up and
don't do that to him. 70s.
you got to head to Colorado.
Yeah,
I'm glad you were here because I thought you were going to skip the show. So
no, I wasn't.
Thank you for being here for this one, Dustin.
For sure,
seriously.
guys. I don't like missing these, so anytime I can be here, I'm gonna. But this one is kind of like, to me, it's like it's dipping its toe in to see what audiences will kind of bite on. So it kind of dips its toe in like the slasher thing. It's not real because it's not really a slasher, and I think the slasher genre that came after this movie kind of saw what Halloween did, the money that it made, and goes, hold my beer. But I think this set up, all like the Friday the 13th and all that stuff. But I think this one did it very well, very psychological, very, everyone brings up like the Jaws and such. I think there's a parallel there where you don't see Michael Myers. I mean, you see him, but you're like, oh, he's there, then he's gone. I don't think they could have made it any better if they had, a $2 million, $3 million budget. I think they would have just messed it up. But I think I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. And the one thing about the toxicity that I think that kind of gets glossed over is like the nudity that's in this wouldn't stand today because of kind of like who was nude in this movie. They're like
Linda.
high school kids.
Yeah, Linda.
Yeah, they're supposed to be what, 14?
No, I think they're like 16, 17.
No, I was gonna
they're
say.
driving and stuff. And that's pretty typical at the time of the movies, though.
Yeah.
Like all the Friday the 13th movies are supposed to be like 16, 17.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but I mean, if you're looking at today, I mean,
right.
I'm surprised that movies like Fast Times hasn't been like totally deleted. But
that's the thing that's funny about that one is like, yeah, that one's been brought up a few times.
Hey, Culture says she's 18.
Culture
knows. What's up, Culture Casino? How you doing, dude? Says great film. There's your rated score from Culture Casino. Great film. Thanks for dropping in, dude. All right, Gary on Dustin, or is that it?
That was it. I think Tom was going to say something though.
I was just helping you.
Fast Times at Ridgemont High thing, but anyway.
Well, I know people have brought it up in recent years, but what can they do? It's based on a true fucking story, so
yeah.
All right. Well, red shirt.
Okay. Let's see if I can do this without getting Tom to put out a contract on me. The first thing I liked about this film was seeing John Carpenter's name at the beginning, because that was like, oh, that's a good sign. It's a slow burn. It builds tension right up to the breaking point, and then, as Tom said, if there's one scene you want to catch, if you just happen to stumble across this, in the after it started, you want to see that final confrontation. I agree. Uh, it has pubes, so it has that going for it. And it's got the great Donald Pleasance, and Donald Pleasance grounded this film for me. Otherwise, it's a bunch of teenagers and a bunch of adults that just sawed off, disappear, go away, and they're not around to help, even when Jamie Lee Curtis is pounding on their front doors and screaming for help. So Donald Pleasance is the adult in this movie. He's the person who understands the stakes, communicates them to the audience, tries to communicate them to the authorities, and they don't listen. It doesn't explain things like how did all the inmates get out of the asylum. It doesn't explain how Michael is so unstoppable. I like that description, unstoppable. But I thought about it and I said, you know what? That's actually a good in movie making terms. That's a good thing, because that's an example of how this movie shows you it doesn't tell you. You don't get a long-winded explanation of why Michael Myers can't be stopped. You don't get a long-winded explanation of how the inmates got out and Michael is able to attack them in the car. You just have to accept it like you do in real life. You don't know when when some crazy person jumps on top of your car and starts smashing his way into it. You just have to decide what the hell do I do now? So in that regard, it works for me, even though at times it frustrated me. But in the end, I bought it, and the stakes couldn't be higher at the end of the movie. And it really worked for me. And I was expecting something different. I was expecting what you guys are all describing as the typical slasher movie. And I think, Tom, you said it was a prototypical. And I like that term for it. It was it was a carefully crafted prototype. And it turned out that it sold like crazy. Everybody wanted that after this movie came out. So, I think that was fantastic. And I still have like issues with it, and it is still not my favorite type. And if I had to say what my favorite horror movie was, it would be a different John Carpenter movie. It would be The Thing. Which I like more than this.
I will not argue against it.
So I can't go all the way up into the 9 or 10. So for greatness, I'm going to give this an 8.5.
Okay.
Which is a surprise to me because I never expected to be anywhere near that. And for toxicity, I think the people who are around the 5 range are right, except it needs to get an extra 0.5 for PJ Souls and her line, see anything you like. So it's a 5.5 on toxicity.
What's even better, she's very proud of that scene, so I think that helps.
Good.
Oh, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you, Richard. Appreciate that. I'll be nice and swifty. So, toxicity, I'm gonna get a 5, and I'm gonna give that for Linda. Go get me a beer. She tells the boyfriend. She's the alpha. He's nothing. So I'm just right off of that. And of course, once again, Michael's obsession with Jamie Lee Curtis that goes on for 4 decades it's special in its own weird way. So we'll go with that but greatness, I mean, the music, the tension, the slow burn, the cast, the fact that it's teenagers or kids or young adults, whatever you want to call them, you can actually invest into its actual characters. So that's really cool. So I like having characters you get invested because you're not supposed to be invested in the killer. That's something that Carpenter didn't want. He wanted you to not be a fan of the character, like by rooting for him. So yeah, I love that this movie, once again, there's definitely a lot of leaving it to the imagination, which is what I love. So it's definitely a pioneer. We've all said that, echoing the same things, but I would give this movie a broad 9.5 out of 10 is where I'm going to stand with it. So that is Halloween, guys. Yes, yes. And I had one score from Boosh. I missed. Sorry, Boosh. 8 out of 10 overall. 5 Jordan violated pumpkins. 10 for toxicity. And my guy Gen Xer. Great show, great panel. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, guys. Thank you for the $5, sir. I do appreciate it. And next week we're doing a different type of movie. It's gonna be dark.
Don't
But
say
this
The
one-
Exorcist because I might be too scared to watch it.
This one is more of a very fine red pill. Sometimes when you look on the world, you see things a certain way, and when you see things, you think, "Oh, is that what it is?" And it happens to have one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. So that is gonna be next week's
Rowdy
flick.
movie.
What
Yes.
a great movie.
I'm here to kick ass and chew bubble gum.
I'm
I'm all out of bubble gum.
What a
Gotta bring some bubble gum to that
legendary
stream.
line. Yeah, right. We better
How many
all
times
let's
has that line been reprised?
by me alone a lot. Yeah. By me alone a lot.
Yep.
A lot.
I just bought the Blu-ray for this, or maybe it was last year. But didn't they? It was a Blu-ray or 4K. Trying to remember.
Yeah,
but,
the U.S. Shout Factory did a 4K of it recently.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Zen in 1992. I do appreciate that. Luckily, it's because I have a great team here on my side. That's what really helps. And yes, it is They Live. It is absolutely They Live. So it's gonna be great next week. So be ready, guys.
They live.
Be ready to consume and obey next week. It's it's gonna be, yes, please be here for They Live. It's gonna be a blast. So yeah, you guys get to go home happy, aka to your beds, as we get ready for They Live next week. It's gonna be huge, guys. It's gonna be huge. So anyways, we'll do that part where we will plug in the channels and the voices and the whatevers, and we'll start off with Dustin because he's got to get the fuck out of here. Dustin, seriously, you're the man. You got to be in Colorado. You got to do a plane in a few hours. You are the fucking man, dude. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. I'm going to be missing next week, but I'll try to catch a little bit of it. Keto Simple. Recipes, product reviews. Just dropped a product review today, and then I've got another one coming out on Friday, I think. And I didn't get one done for next week, so there'll be one lacking next week until I get back home. But yeah, check us out. We're funny. We say dumb shit. So.
All right, Dustin. Hey, thank you for being here. Kick ass tonight. All right, I appreciate it as always. Have a great night, but have a great week in Colorado, dude. I can't wait to come back in a few weeks with stories, man. We'll have to talk about it.
You guys have a good night, and I will see you guys in 2 weeks.
All right, guys, this is his channel. Subscribe to the man here. That was Dustin. Thank you, sir. And now the red shirt. And yes, Dustin does have an epic beard.
Well, you can see me here most Tuesdays, fairly frequently on whatever cast on Wednesday nights, and pretty much always on Friday nights after Friday Night Tights on the MFR Cocktail Lounge on the Foulball Productions channel. And I don't have anything on my channel, but I'll check my Twitter link into the chat and follow me on Twitter. I tend to repost or tweet out live streams that I wrench on. So if you don't get a notification from YouTube because you only have a 9.5% chance of getting a notification for live streams that you follow, you might see my tweet. That'd be my pleasure, Culture. That'd be fun. Yeah. So I'm all over the place in chats, modding, and I even show up sometimes on shows where I don't have a wrench. But anyway, everybody, Nick, as always, thank you. It was a pleasure. This was fun watching this movie the first time and getting to talk about it, especially listening to Tom and hearing his take on a movie that he love so much, and I learned a lot from him. I'm going to have to go back and watch it again after listening to all the things he said, because I will see it with new eyes.
Oh, I barely scraped the surface, man.
I'm sure you did. But we would have needed a 12-hour. We would have needed an EFAP
Absolutely.
for you.
That's what she said.
Well, and that's the thing. It's the beauty of this movie is it's been very well documented. There's plenty of great documentaries, and there's audio commentaries and other things if you're interested. So if you like getting into the trivia stuff, I definitely recommend all that stuff. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Red Shirt. Right. And yes, listen to Tom on what he says. He speaks the truth. All right, Mark.
Thank you. Yep. So yeah, a lot of fun to be here again on another Toxic Tuesday night, and I just hit 300 subs on my channel, so I'll plug that. And thanks to everyone who subbed and watched, and so I appreciate that. And I was just at comic. Thank you. Yeah. So I never thought I'd. It's hard to believe that 300 people. Like, wow, 300 people want to watch what I'm putting out. But yeah, I really appreciate that. And I was just at Comic-Con, picked up this cool dialect. So
I've got one of those. They're the best.
So
you just secrete it in the house somewhere and then set it off and
set it off. Yeah. So this is a limited edition from Comic-Con Time War dialect. So but yeah, I do a lot of toys, and when I'm also on Thursday night on Clobbering Times, and Sunday night's my big show, Sunday Night Geekery. So appreciate if everyone stops by on Sunday night and check out what we've got going. And really appreciate everyone that's watched and sub to the channel, and it's been a fun ride. So yeah, here's to. And I think didn't you just hit 670s or
I did. I've crossed the 600 mark. Thank you. Yeah,
that's awesome. So I'm only
I'm
twice your size, but I have half the subs. But I'll work on that. But
you're twice my intelligence.
No. But it's just really fun to be here. I hope you guys like that slideshow, and had fun having Mad make a few more appearances. So we'll see what happens next week with be like Mick, the hidden Mickeys. Well, maybe we'll do some hidden Mads next week. See who can find the Mads. Yeah. But thank you, Nick, and thanks for letting me be part of this. This makes Tuesday night a lot of fun. So appreciate it.
And you help make it that much more doing this work, man. Seriously, between the panel and the chat, we are very sincerely grateful for your insane contributions to this. So you, sir, have a great night. Have a great
and thank you for that, Gen Xer. Yep. Like seeing the room. Yep.
We'll have to do another show off panel one day. You have a good night and good week, sir.
Thank you.
Well, thanks very much again, Nick, for doing this. Thanks to everybody else on the panel. And thank you to the chat, especially. It's been on fire tonight. And a lot of people that love this movie, clearly. And it's always great to have them expressing those opinions. Makes the whole show worthwhile. So thank you to everybody. As Mark said, I've managed to cross the mythical 600 barrier, which came as a bit of a surprise. So I must be doing something, whatever it is people are watching, and I'm very grateful to all of them that do. We did have a fantastic live stream yesterday, on almost ran for 4 hours, which is slightly longer than they normally go, on Hammer horror movies. I think 2 hours of that was looking at the girls of Hammer in close enhanced detail. Probably took up most of the time, but so I got a couple of videos I'm working on that I'll get out this week, and I'll be on Midnight's Edge After Dark on Thursday. And I think Brahma's in the chat, and he and I are working on a new hockey and whiskey themed show called Bourbon and Boarding. We've got the thumbnail, we've got the intro video. We're just looking for a mutual time that we can do it, because the hockey season is upon us.
Let's go Rangers.
Well, I've got you pegged as a guest on the show, mate. You will have to drink whiskey on screen, though. So
sounds good.
Bourbon. So
what an obligation! Oh no, poor Mark.
So you will be a guest to represent the East Coast. We're both Central Division fans, so we need to spread it around a bit. Some East Coast representation. So, but yeah, and I'll just be popping up here and there as usual. So thanks again, Nick. Cheers.
Cheers to you, sir. I look forward to when we could do our Back to Black Sabbaths next
Oh,
month.
I forgot. Yeah, Nick and I are gonna do a couple of deluxe releases of
Heaven
Heaven
and
and
Hell,
Hell and
Mob
Mob
Rules.
Rules.
Nice.
It's gonna be
one on
huge
his channel, one on mine. So
for them remasters. Yes, sir. Have a great
When's
night.
that coming out?
Next month.
Yeah, early November, like November 10th or 13th, something around about that.
Just
Yeah.
in time for Christmas. Yeah.
Vinyl and CD. So I'm probably going to get the vinyl.
Oh, yeah. All right, 70s. Take care, man. Thank you. Hi, Tom.
I was not going to say anything.
Okay, well, Michael, I know you're not going to say anything, but thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. You do give thumbs up, expressions. I do appreciate that. You still should consider using conditioner for your hair. I would really recommend conditioner. Okay. And next, just remember, William Shatner sits on your face. So, good night, Michael. Thank you for a great movie.
Can't breathe in that thing.
Oh, Tom. Dude, your energy was absolutely fucking amazing tonight, dude.
You slashed it.
Yeah, you're right. He slashed it. No, thank you for that. And the fact that you're saying all that and you barely touched the surface is even more impressive.
Oh yeah, there's tons of stuff out about this movie. So if you're a fan or you've just become a fan, do yourself a favor and check it out, guys. It's a classic.
Do you got a radio show coming up in a few minutes?
I don't know about tonight. Maybe had we gotten done by midnight, I might have. But maybe some other time or maybe an hour from now. Who knows?
Okay. Only 10 p.m. here, Tom.
Well, it's 10 p.m. where you are, but it's midnight now where I am. But
I'm on Universal Standard Time.
Yeah, I have this thing about starting it at the top of the hour. So
okay. Well, let me know next time. We'll make sure we can transition over perfectly.
No
okay. All right. Well,
Tom's
sir,
used to transitioning.
Tom, thank you for your contributions, your transitioning, and as on top of it for plugging in the show for After Meat. Obviously, that shit has done wonders, and a lot of newer faces are coming around. So, thank you for bringing the audience with it. I appreciate it, and I look forward to talking They Live next week.
Yeah, I love you doing this show. I think it's a great idea, and I support it wholeheartedly. So I'm glad to do what I can to help. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Always appreciated. All right, kids. Obviously, I do Toxic Tuesday, and I got this wonderful panel with me. Next week's They Live, Friday Night Comic Shop Talk as well, every Friday nights. You can find me at Midnight's Edge After Dark. And of course, with Comics Division, the Dicks Division on Yelling at Parked Cars. And I'll have a video out this week as well. So, yes, those are the things. And I am also on Gilded. Please join me on Gilded. Despite what Tom says about Gilded, you should join me on Gilded. I'm going to post it in the chat right here. And yes,
praise Gilded. Praise Gilded.
All praise Gilded.
Praise Gilded.
Fuck you, Gilded.
Everyone's channels is in the descriptions. Where if you look at, we're on the descriptions. All the channels are there. So sub to the channels. Seriously, guys, thank you for being here. I can't wait till next week where we get very red pilled and talk They Live. Until then, guys, we don't have some fancy intro. This is the part where we just say, go to bed. Good night, everybody.
So long.
Thank you for coming.